charge. Amen. Sergeant at Arms, I now direct that you ring the quorum bell for another 10 minutes.
And encourages planting species across the country. It orders the uprooting of all eucalyptus trees and replacement with other variety of trees, particularly the indigenous species, to ensure the conservation of water resources. The bell for quorum has been rung in accordance to our standing orders to allow members of Parliament to come to the second sitting of the morning session. And members are expected to debate on the motion on the banning the growing of eucalyptus trees in the country. This is the bill that is brought by Honorable Moses Kirima, the Member of Parliament, and the House that resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, that it orders absolute banning of planting of eucalyptus trees and encourages planting of indigenous species across the country. It also orders the uprooting of all eucalyptus trees and replacement with other varieties of trees, particularly indigenous species, to ensure conservation of water resources and sources and preserve the ecosystem. It also initiates the process of putting in place punitive measures against persons who defy the above orders. Eucalyptus trees species are popular among large-scale and commercial tree farmers in Kenya. This tree species has grown in most ecological zones in the country, and in particular in the western central Rift Valley, central Kenya, parts of eastern and the coastal regions of the country, that is in the 47 counties and the 290 constituencies. Farming of the eucalyptus trees has been on the rise due to their fast growth, good economic returns, and diverse commercial uses such as transmission poles, fuel wood, timber, plywood, pulp, fencing posts, and building material, among others. And it's a concern that eucalyptus tree species are majorly cited as highly water depleting agents through high consumption, transpiration, and evaporation, thus causing the drying up of streams, rivers, depletion of groundwater sources. The high depletion of water by the said trees has caused adverse negative effects on soil fertility, land degradation, and are of serious threat to biodiversity. Recognizing that due to the serious threats that it posed by the eucalyptus trees to the biodiversity, there is need therefore for their removal and replacement with other tree species. Also, a motion on expansion of drug substance abuse rehabilitation centers, that is a bill brought by Honorable John Makali, and members of Parliament are expected to debate on it today, this morning. The House urges the government through the Institute intensive programs for the dissemination of information on alcohol substance abuse in line with the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act 2010 to increase the number of rehabilitation centers across the country. Now, according to the National Protocol for Treatment Substance Use Disorders in Kenya, that is by the Ministry of Health, drug abuse has been increasing in Kenya, especially among the youth, with statistics indicating that more than half of drug users are aged between 10 and 19 years. Those are school-going children. Further, aware that research released by the National Authority for Campaign Against Drug Abuse, that is NECADA, in December 2022, placed Western region of Kenya as the leading region in alcohol and substance abuse at a percentage of 23.8%, followed by the coastal region, which garnered 13.9%, and the central region of Kenya, that is 11.9%. The high level of drug abuse in the western region is highly attributable to the illegal entry points from the neighboring countries and unlicensed establishments, especially in the border points in the counties of Bungoma and Busia, with statistics indicating that 2 out of the 5 establishments in Bungoma operate illegally. A majority of the consumers of illegal substances are school-going children who end up dropping out of school, cognizant of the fact that Alcohol and Drinks Control Act of 2010 established the Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, whose sole mandate and purpose is to, among other things, facilitate the dissemination of information on alcoholic drinks and promote rehabilitation programs in the country, that is in the 290 constituencies and the 47 counties. Also, on the motion on the establishment of strategic grain storage, reservoirs and silos in close proximity to smallholders, farmers, that is by Honorable Jessica Mbaling, and the House this morning resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, establishes a strategic plan, grain storage reservoirs and silos in close proximity to smallholders, farmers, so as to address poor harvest insufficiencies in the country, and approximately 33% of the GDP and employing more than 40%, the total population, 70% of the rural population. That is, agriculture is the backbone of Kenya's economy, and that majority of Kenyans highly depend on agriculture as an economic activity. Also, it has been declining as a result of adverse effects of climate change, resulting in droughts, famine, food insecurity. That smallholder farming is predominantly rain-fed cereal grain farming, and farmers experience boom harvest every time there is adequate rains in the country. It's a concern that such farmers majorly lack proper post-harvest grain handling and modern storage facilities, and resort to selling their harvest almost immediately after harvesting at lower prices when market is flooded to reduce the risk of suffering and losses through spoilage. Cognizant of the fact that the current state of affairs exacerbates poverty in rural areas, there is need for instituting measures that boost local production to augment our grain reservoirs as stipulated under the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy, which would also lead to a reduction of grains imports to the country and support the local farmers, as agriculture is the backbone of the country's economy. Also, there is a motion by Honorable Peter Salasha on regulation of the sugar industry to discourage branding of the sugar by non-millers. That are aware that the importation and exportation of sugar is regulated by various laws, including the Crop Act and Agriculture Food Authority Act 2013. It's aware that the Agriculture Food Authority is charged with the responsibility of regulating the importation and exportation of sugar in the country in accordance with the law. It's noted that the importation of sugar is also negotiated within the regional trade blocks, frameworks, and agreements to enable the country to meet the demand of sugar. Individuals or entities are allowed to import sugar, provided they obtain the necessary permits and meet the required standards. Despite these regulations, there have been instances of illegal importation of low-quality sugar or adulterated sugar. It's concerned that traders have been found to rebrand sugar which does not meet the standards of the Kenya Bureau of Standards. It's deeply concerned that this poses significant health risks to consumers and residents, as well as undermining the efforts to regulate and strengthen the sugar industry to protect local millers. The country has the potential to produce enough sugar to meet its domestic demand, as the sector has been a key driver of economic growth. There is need for concerted efforts by stakeholders to discourage the branding of sugar by non-millers and promote the development of the local sugar industry. Now, therefore, the House today resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Trade, Investments and Industry, ensures strict operations of the regulation frameworks governing sugar and importations into the country. The policy on the provincial of mental health services in all healthcare facilities that's brought by Honorable Mishi Mboko, that the House urges the national government through the Ministry of Health to collaborate with county governments to develop a policy on integrating mental health services in whole healthcare facilities in the country. Article 43(1).
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader. Majority Leader. Honorable Owen Baya, you're presenting the papers on behalf of the...
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, to thank you, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 27th September 2023, morning sitting. 1. A report of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. A. Homa Bay Town. B. Kamukunji. C. Lari. D. Mathare. 2. County Government Budget Implementation Review Report for the financial year 2022-2023 from the Office of the Controller of Budget. 3. The Performance Audit Report on Conservation of Water Towers in Kenya by the Kenya Water Towers Agency from the Office of the Auditor General. 4. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board for the year ended 30th June 2023 and the certificates therein. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay and I thank you.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of certain business from standing orders 43.
Honorable Speaker, and to thank you, Honorable Speaker, this is a procedural motion and exemption of certain business from standing order number 43. That this House resolves to exempt business appearing as order numbers 14 and 15 in today's order paper from the provisions of standing orders 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for businesses not sponsored by the majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Honorable Speaker, I think we have important business that we started, and it behoves on us as a House that we finish the business that is ahead of us, and that is specifically the report of the Committee of the Whole on the sugar bill and other businesses. Honorable Speaker, this is a procedural motion that we request that we finish that business as we proceed on, and the other businesses can come later on. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. I ask Honorable Shepkonga to second.
Honorable Speaker, I second.
What are we on? Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House resolves to exempt the business appearing on order numbers 14 and 15 in today's order paper from the provisions of Standing Order 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Looks like it's the mood of the House that I put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that the House resolves to exempt the business appearing on order numbers 14 and 15 in today's order paper from the provisions of Standing Order number 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022. Question to be put and third reading.
Honorable members, I now put the question that this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, majority or minority, sorry, yes. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Mover to move the bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Madam, I beg to move that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, be now read a third time. I also request the Honorable Kakai Bisau to second.
I second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022 be read a third time. Okay, before I put the question, I think let me allow Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my colleagues took a lot of time into this bill. They invested their time and energy. It's important, Honorable Speaker, that I really appreciate my colleagues, right from the Committee on Agriculture, especially the Chair, the Vice Chair, and the membership. Not forgetting the Secretary, Honorable Speaker, they traversed the country to discuss this bill until it has matured today. It's important, Honorable Speaker, that they accept my appreciation, that, Honorable Speaker, their input was valued. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to most sincerely appreciate the Speaker of the National Assembly, who really supported the cause of this bill all round and made it possible that the bill is up to today. Honorable Speaker, allow me also to appreciate the task force report team, which made it possible that all the information we have gathered into this bill is a product of the task force, which held 17 sittings, Honorable Speaker, across the country. Honorable Speaker, allow me to appreciate the Sugar Caucus, which is a team of colleagues in this House who took their time to make the bill success. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to appreciate the Western Parliamentary Caucus who held a seminar in Kakamega to discuss the bill. Finally, Honorable Speaker, it will be important, I must acknowledge that this bill has come through this House on the second time. The first time it appeared here with you, it was through Mheshimiwa Monyinyi. Allow me to recognize his efforts that he made a build-up of this bill in his capacity as the member of this House. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I thank you so much for giving me this time, and I appreciate my colleagues. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I now put the question that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022 be read a third time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the development, regulation, and promotion of the sugar industry, to provide for the establishment, powers, and functions of the Kenya Sugar Board, and for connected purposes.
Honorable members, I now direct that this bill be referred to the Departmental Committee on Finance. Not yet? All right, next order, it seems it had been referred. Next order.
Order number 10, the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 48 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Parliamentary Pensions Act and for connected purposes. Order number 11, the Institute of Social Work Professionals Bill, National Assembly Bill number 17 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment of the Institute of Social Work and Social Work Professionals Board, to provide for the examination, registration, and regulation of the standards and practice of social work professionals and for connected purposes. Order number 12, the Kenya Roads Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Kenya Roads Act. Order number 13, the National Land Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Land Commission Act and for connected purposes. Order number 14, motion, consideration of the Universities Regulations 2023.
May proceed? Honorable Chepkonga, you may move the motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I thought the clerk was still reading. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House adopts the report on the Universities Regulations 2023, legal notice number 56 of 2023, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 14 September 2023, and pursuant to Section 15, subsection 4 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, recommends to the House to annul in entirety the University Regulations 2023 on the following reasons, among others, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this was a very vibrant discussion with the Cabinet Secretary for Education. We made so many recommendations for them to effect amendments, and we wanted them to withdraw the regulations so that we do not need to annul them. But since they have refused to do so, we are recommending to the House that these regulations be annulled in its entirety on the following reasons. One, with regard to the question of certificates and diplomas and degrees, Honorable Speaker, Part 11 of the regulations provides for the recognition and equation of degrees, diplomas, certificates conferred as or awarded by foreign universities and institutions, among others, Madam Speaker. The regulation seeks to usurp the role and functions of the Kenya National Qualification Authority, which is established under an Act of Parliament, which is the Kenya National Qualification Framework Act, number 22 of 2014. Madam Speaker, this is a body which is responsible for the establishing of standards for harmonization and recognition of national and foreign qualification, advising and supporting any person, body, or institution which is responsible for the award of national qualifications and defining the levels of qualification and competencies. There's therefore need to have consulted the authority to demonstrate consultation on the regulation itself and its impact on the national qualification regulations. Because, Madam Speaker, the National Qualification Regulations provides very explicitly and clearly, and does not leave any room for any other institution to purport to take over the functions of the Kenyan National Qualification Framework Authority. And so to that effect, Madam Speaker, these regulations are in contravention of Section 13A of the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013, which requires that all regulations must conform to all other written laws. These regulations, Madam Speaker, do not conform to all other written laws. The second one, Madam Speaker, is that these regulations did not, the statutory making body did not provide any regulatory impact statement. This is important in the sense that, Madam Speaker, the university regulations, as promulgated by the minister, heavily and in a big percentage affects the citizens and families of this country, not only economically, but also socially. And for both learners and parents and guardians and sponsors, including workers employed by the universities. Section 6, Section 7, and Section 8 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 requires that where regulations are likely to impose significant costs on the community, then they ought to conduct a regulatory impact statement and submit a regulatory impact statement to the committee. They failed to do so, Madam Speaker, to conduct and to publish a regulatory impact statement in the Gazette or newspapers of wide circulation, and thereby contravening Section 6, Section 7, and Section 8 of the Statutory Instruments Act. And on that note, Madam Speaker, we are therefore recommending that since they did not comply with the Statutory Instruments Act that governs the making of all regulations, these regulations must be annulled in its entirety. The third, Madam Speaker, is that the committee noted that the regulations fall short of complying with the minimum threshold set out in Article 10, Article 118, and Article 259, Sub-Article 11 of the Constitution, as read with Section 5 and Section 5A and 13 of the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013 in relation to conducting public participation prior to the publication of the regulations. Madam Speaker, we consider this as very important. This is a very important tenet and doctrine of the Constitution, that public participation must be conducted where it intends to affect any person in this country. These regulations, they were promulgated without carrying out public participation as required by Article 10 and 118 and 259 of the Constitution, Madam Speaker. So in bringing these regulations, they are illegal in the first instance. So we should annul them, and they should comply, and they should conduct public participation so that they can hear what the citizens and all those who will be affected want to say concerning these regulations, and they should therefore amend as necessary. The fourth, Madam Speaker, is non-compliance with relevant policies to improve standards, like the report of the Presidential Task Force on the recommendations of the university's education. Madam Speaker, you know, one of the cardinal questions that we ask them is that we have a task force which has made certain recommendations, and those recommendations are being implemented right now. And you are submitting regulations which should have included those recommendations which you are now implementing. And those recommendations are in the form of a guideline. The Statutory Instruments Act requires that anything that is promulgated in the form of a guideline or a policy or a regulation must be brought to this House for approval. Madam Speaker, those regulations, those recommendations and guidelines are being implemented without this House approving them. They are highly illegal. It is affecting the education sector in this country. It is affecting people. Even when you say, Madam Speaker, it could be good policies. Like, for instance, they are saying that the funding for the universities will follow a certain trajectory. Now, those regulations have not been brought to this House, and they are implementing them, and it is affecting our students. If we go to our constituencies, we are being asked, we have been told to pay over 500,000. We as members of parliament, we do not know what to tell them. And those regulations have not been brought here, and it is affecting the people. So what we are saying, Madam Speaker, is that these regulations should be annulled, and those recommendations should be included in the next regulations which will be brought to this House. Madam Speaker, you know, some people think that they are very important. You know, during your time, Madam Speaker, as the chair of this committee, you annulled the judiciary regulations, judiciary fund regulations. And the judiciary itself appreciated that, in fact, the regulations themselves were unconstitutional. And in fact, pursuant to the recommendations that you made, they went further and amended those regulations, they brought back, and you approved the regulations. So, Madam Speaker, we are asking those who are making authorities to comply with that statutory instruments act, the enabling statute, and the constitution. Madam Speaker, we cannot allow people to usurp the role of parliament. Article 95 of the constitution is very clear. There is no person in this country which has been given the power to make laws except this house, Madam Speaker. And so anybody who proposes to usurp him, we will take a dim view of that particular action, Madam Speaker. So the regulations do not, therefore, Madam Speaker, provide for the notice of the intention to revoke the interim letter of authority which negates the right to fair administrative action. Madam Speaker, these regulations provide for revocation of charters or letters of authority that have been granted by universities. Now, they do not provide for mechanism of due process provided under Article 47 of the Constitution. Where you want to take away the right of people, you must have a due process in which you then take away that particular right that has been granted to that particular institution, to that particular person. These regulations do not confer that right, Madam Speaker, in contravention of Article 47 of the Constitution. And so therefore we are recommending to this House that these regulations be annulled in its entirety, and that the statutory making body makes the necessary amendments and brings back those regulations. It is not for them to imagine that because we have annulled these regulations, they are going to sit on them. We are going to call for these regulations because it is affecting the students, it's affecting the parents, the guardians, affecting the university employees, so those regulations must be brought to the House. The committee wishes to express its gratitude, Madam Speaker, to you and the clerk for the support that was given to this committee. And on behalf of, I would like to single a particular one member who took time to go through these regulations with a tooth comb, the Honorable Ruku. In fact, he had so many proposals on the things that were wrong with these regulations, Madam Speaker. In fact, we gave the Cabinet Secretary, and he was shocked. In fact, he had to request for adjournment because of the shock that he saw with which the Honorable Ruku was passionate about pointing out the inconsistencies in the regulations with the Statutory Instruments Act, with the Universities Act. I know a question has been asked, Madam Speaker, as to what will happen to the digital university that we approved here, because part of it was anchored on these regulations. As you know, the regulations, anything that has been made pursuant to these regulations cannot be null and void. Two, Section 70 of the Universities Act gives the minister to grant charters to universities. So this digital university is part of the university, although it is a digital university, it's operating in the cloud, but it is still a university in its form. So the Section 70 of the Universities Act still preserves it. Two, Madam Speaker, this House approved the charter itself. So when the House approved the charter, it was in a form of regulations. So there is nothing that is inconsistent with what we did, Madam Speaker. And so I'd like to sincerely thank the members of my committee for the support that they have given to the committee in ensuring that these regulations are considered in a timeous manner. It is therefore my pleasure and duty to present to the House the committee's report on the consideration of the University Regulation 2023, legal notice number 56 of 2023, that recommends that it be annulled in its entirety. And I beg to move, and I would like to call upon the former powerful Cabinet Secretary for Internal Security, the Honorable Sunguli, the Member of Parliament for Kilgoris, and the member of this committee to second. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my learned friend and chairman of the committee for the kind introduction about my historical past. and to describe power that I no longer have. But Madam Speaker, the regulations, the university's regulations 2023 do not meet many requirements. They fail both in matters of procedure as well as matters of substance. We, as a committee, looked at these regulations with a tooth comb. We also had conversations with the minister and his officers who came before us. And we actually did inform them what we thought was wrong with those regulations. And I do not want to repeat what the mover has said. But in short, first thing, Madam Speaker, these regulations are guilty of duplicity of roles. Because once you give one authority power, you cannot take that power to another authority because that would be in contravention of the law. So we wanted these particular functions that they wanted to give to themselves to be left intact, and that the regulations should not therefore attempt to transfer powers that were properly seated in another organization. Now, the second thing is that these regulations were published without public participation. Public participation is a principle on which many have fallen now in Kenya. It is no longer just a procedural requirement, it is now a constitutional requirement. And we thought that these regulations should have published in the newspapers as were required and asked for the public to come and give their input. So on those grounds, that these regulations should fail. Madam Speaker, the big problem that the Honorable Chepkonga has put forward is this idea that Parliament can only be informed in form of regulations about things that are already happening in the ministries. Parliament, like the law, cannot operate in vain. What precedes the action is the regulations. Regulations do not come after the action. If the report, the Presidential Task Force report, is already being implemented, then why would it be necessary for Parliament to be told to make regulations about things that are already being done? It is in breach of the law because the Law Statutory Instruments Act clearly says that Parliament must examine all the regulations that are made by the executive. And the executive cannot anticipate the activities of Parliament and say, let's just do it anyway because Parliament will go and rubber stamp it. I think it is the responsibility of this House to stamp its authority anytime they see this action, so that we can be able to make law and the law be obeyed, so that nobody else can think that they have a responsibility or they have the authority to make law. This House must guard its role jealously and say to the Ministry of Education, you did not do the right thing. And all these regulations now, my dear honorable members, and let them come through the front door, because they did not come properly. They did not come before us with clean hands. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I beg to second.
But honorable members, before I propose the question, allow me to recognize the presence of the following schools in the public gallery. Thika Road Christian School from Roysambu constituency, Nairobi County. Bishop Maro Primary School, Maragua constituency, Murang'a County. And seated in the speaker's gallery is, I wish to welcome Mwangaza Secondary School from Baragua constituency, Murang'a County. And on my own behalf and that of the entire House, I wish to welcome the students and teachers of those schools. Welcome to Parliament. Thank you. Honorable members, I now propose the question that the House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the University's Regulations 2023 laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 14th September 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and Standing Order 210-4B, annuls in its entirety the University's Regulations 2023, published as legal notice number 56 of 2023. Will as many as of that opinion say, sorry. You want to debate? Okay. The Honorable D.D. Russell, member for Saku.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to support the annulment of these regulations. Madam Speaker, as you know, this House is the supreme body that makes the laws of this land. And Article 94(5) of our Constitution clearly says that nothing outside this House or nobody outside this House will have the authority to make regulation or laws that are binding. And that is why everything that has to do in governance, in regulation, in policy, must come before this House. I would like to support the committee, particularly in the area of Article 18 of our Constitution, that extols the virtues of public participation. Public participation does not really means that people will gather in a hall and decide on a whim on the need of a certain thing. But the public is given full hearing of what is it that they really want about a particular law. And for that reason, public participation is one of the areas where the Constitution actually continuously in different parts says that the people must participate in the laws that are going to govern them. Madam Speaker, when we look at our university education, and my honorable colleagues will bear me witness, we come up with new universities, the universities increase fees, they bring about courses, maybe particular lecturers who like to run particular courses, without due regard to the large masses of the very poor Kenyans who are seeking higher education in this land. We actually allowed the Ministry of Education and the universities to get away with a crime, increasing the university fees from 20,000 to almost 50, 60,000. Where are these Kenyans going to get this money from? That is why we as members of parliament must guard this country against any vices, particularly in terms of laws and regulation. Because our CDFs have actually become harbinger of bursaries, because we cannot do anything. If those youngsters who qualify to go for higher education are not able to pay fees, then why put money in project? Actually, we put most of our money in bursaries, so that none remain in the villages. Madam Speaker, what we are experiencing nowadays is privatization of education in Kenya without serious regulatory framework, where it is those who have money who come up with the schools and colleges, and they run it the way they want, so long as they pay the right bodies, the right individuals at that appropriate level. So there's very little protection for the Kenyan citizen. Therefore, looking at this particular regulation that has been annulled, if it is not consistent with our constitution, if it is inconsistent with existing policies for higher education or university education, I think it will not stand the test of time. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support the committee's report and say let this regulation be annulled. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And Honorable Members, I just want to bring your attention to Standing Order number 97, which means that we have 2.5 hours for this particular motion, and each member will have an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes, other than, of course, the majority leader and minority leader. I now call upon Honorable Member for Mandera West, Honorable Adan Haji.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also stand to support this report. I congratulate Honorable Chikonga and his team for bringing this timely report to annul the regulations which are not useful to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, the Kenyan universities have become commercial, so much commercialized, without regard to any sort of benefits to the communities. The type of graduates that we are churning out will show you or will tell you that what is happening there is of very low standard. Regulations are just made left, right, without passing it through this house. And different universities have got different regulations. And all this is compromising with the quality of education. Honorable Speaker, recently I advertised some positions for a small company of mine, and I was conducting interviews. If you look at the papers those students are having, you will wonder what type of papers these are. So good, so nice, and you really long to see those students for, I mean, those interested guys to interview them. But when they come in front of you, the way they talk, the quality of their English, and if you give them a small written test, what they write, and the qualifications that they have in papers are so much contrary to one another. And you wonder what type of universities they have gone through. And because of that, the Parliament should make sure that proper regulations are passed, that regulations that are not beneficial to this country, to the education sector of this country, are annulled. Those which have already been in place are annulled, like what we are now doing. And for that matter, I stand to support the annulment of this regulation and many others which have similar sort of characteristics that do not help the Kenyan citizens in any way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The Honorable Samuel Atandi, member for Alego Usonga.
Madam Chair, I'm not ready to talk on this one.
Okay. The Honorable Mangale Chiforomodo, member for Lunga Lunga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I like to support the report for this committee that this regulation needs to be nullified, because then the powers of this House has been actually been abused. When we allow such acts to take place in Kenya, then we will find ourselves not useful to the country. And of course, it is our mandate to regulate and also to do laws for this country. Madam Speaker, these new regulations which were set actually were detrimental, because you find very new issues were introduced, right from the funding to management of the capitations and also the loans, which has brought a lot of confusion to the students of this country and also the parents. So I don't wish to take a lot of time, but Madam Speaker, I wish to stress that the work of legislation should be left to the National Assembly and not any other entity. For this matter, I wish to stress and assert that I support the proposal by the committee to nullify the regulation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. If everybody took as short as Honorable Mangale, I think many of us will be able to contribute. I hope you can take the cue from him. The Honorable Agnes Pareyo, member for Narok North.
Speaker, for giving this opportunity to discuss the regulations, and because it is the mandate of this House to come up with regulations, because it is us that are supposed to set what we need our ministries or our departments to follow. And so I also feel that they have taken the responsibilities of the legislators to come up with the legislation so that we can have the controls of all what happens in all the departments. And so I also support the decision of the committee that things came up with this idea of saying that legislation should be left to the members of parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Rachel Nyamai, member for Kitui South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I would like to thank the chair of the committee, the Honorable Chepkonga, for doing a very good job for this House. And to note that I have been following the work that the committee has been doing, and when they annul a regulation, they have been giving very good recommendations to the concerned institution. And on this particular one, they have also done the same. Identified the areas of weakness, identified areas of contradiction, and given a very good way forward on how these regulations can be brought back to this House so that they can be passed in the right way. Honorable Speaker, looking at this regulation that has been annulled, we see an institution that the roles that it was initially given being taken away through a regulation that has not been brought regularly. And this is the institution called the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, which was created in 2015 with the purpose of ensuring that there is proper harmonization and coordination of training, of assessment, and generally education, and ensuring that there are proper standards in the education sector. Honorable Speaker, for this institution to be denied its role through this regulation and these roles being given to another entity is not right. So for that reason, Honorable Speaker, I support this annulment. And also agree with the committee that they must go back, the ministry should go back, look at where they went wrong, ensure that they do not contradict existing laws and other regulations so that they can bring it properly. Honorable Speaker, also in this report, the committee has indicated clearly that these regulations are bringing extra costs not only to the universities, but all other institutions that are within the universities, including our businessmen and businesswomen that are operating in these universities. It is affecting lecturers, it is affecting students, it is affecting researchers, and many others that are working here in these universities. And also, the committee chair has clearly explained that there is no survey that was done to show what was the impact of these regulations in all the communities that are within the universities. And for that, Honorable Speaker, I agree with the committee that we cannot pass a regulation which has not clearly provided for a report to show that a survey was done to show the impact of these regulations in the people who have brought us to this house. And Madam Speaker, this being the institution that represents the common people, we must say that this does not qualify. Honorable Speaker, also very importantly and clearly elaborated by the chair is the matter of public participation, which this house has taken seriously, including the budget-making process, Madam Speaker, where it is clear that we cannot pass anything without going back to the people that we represent to ask them what is their opinion. Madam Speaker, these regulations, when they were being brought here, public participation was not done, so we do not know what the universities themselves think, especially the university community, not the leadership of the university, and all the other entities. We do not know what they think about this. So, Madam Speaker, based on those 3 points, I would like to agree with the chair of the report of this committee, the Honorable Chepkonga, and the committee that these regulations must be annulled, taken back to the universities so that they can be brought through the front door and not through the back door. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
The Honorable Moses Ingenda, member for Malava.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what I'm realizing is that being Vice Chair of Education Committee, we feel embarrassed because part of our functions is to oversight universities. Madam Speaker, it's very surprising that regulations that are governing universities have come straight to the House through the Committee on Implementation. I would urge that, Madam Speaker, maybe we look at how we develop these regulations. It would be very important, Madam Speaker, that these regulations or such regulations, before they are presented before the House, they pass through the relevant committee for the input of the committee before they come to the committee chaired by Chepkonga, Madam Speaker, so that we cannot have this kind of situation where regulations for the entire university system are actually annulled on the floor of the House. Madam Speaker, thank you.
The Honorable Member for Arieda, Dr. Otiendo Amolo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on this consideration of the report by the Delegated Legislation Committee, I support the motion. And just some very quick points. Madam Speaker, it must be remembered that Article 94 and 95 of the Constitution have always remained very clear. Nothing will have the force of law in this country unless it is passed by Parliament. And sometimes people forget that. They think that they can hide under subsidiary legislation or regulation and pass laws that will have the effect of law. They must be remembered that will not happen. And I want to commend the committee for this kind of move. Madam Speaker, it must be said that however good intentioned one is, it is not sufficient to consult some people outside or even those in the executive or the judiciary or any other arm of government and assume that you can overlook Parliament. I am even shocked to hear that such regulations could be proposed without engaging the relevant committee on education. That is outrageous. I think that is something that must be discouraged at all levels. Any regulations made under any particular area must involve the relevant committee before it is then presented as regulations to be adopted. Madam Speaker, it is quite important to note that especially in the education sector, there is so much that is going on. There are so many committees. As we speak, I'm aware that there had been a committee that was appointed to look into various areas, especially in re-engineering the education sector. To the best of my knowledge, that report has not been considered by this House, either in terms of amending the Act or in terms of any regulations. But I'm surprised that I learned that my very good friend, Professor Dote, and a team have now been appointed as the implementing committee. They've already started implementing something that has not been passed as law, something that has not been even considered in terms of regulations. I think that is utter contempt for the National Assembly. That is the perfect example of why we must send a warning to all those who think they can bypass Parliament by bringing policy and implementing it before it becomes law. These regulations must not just be rejected, but they must be rejected with a very clear message that if you bring another set without consulting the relevant committee, without consulting the public, then they will be rejected until doomsday. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dagoretti South, Honourable John Waweru.
Madam Speaker, I thank you. Madam Speaker, it is the English that say that you have not succeeded until your successor succeeds. And Madam Speaker, you performed exemplarily well in this committee of delegated legislation. And you're succeeding even further because your successor is actually doing an impressive job. Madam Speaker, I would like to start by congratulating the Committee on Delegated Legislation for such a good report that they bring to us. And we are convinced, Madam Speaker, we are convinced that these regulations ought to be annulled in their entirety. Madam Speaker, if these regulations were just offending some regulations or offending a policy or offending a legislation, maybe this House would have been a bit kinder. But these regulations are offending the supreme law, the Constitution. Madam Speaker, it is the Constitution that requires that there should be robust public participation. This House has spoken severally. The seat you're sitting on has pronounced itself severally that public participation cannot be seen to just be a PR exercise. Substantive public participation on these regulations did not happen. Not only did the public participation not happen, Madam Speaker, on an issue that affects so many students, so many parents, so many families, there was no demonstration that there had been a regulatory impact assessment done on these regulations. Madam Speaker, on that count, these regulations must be annulled. Madam Speaker, there is a lot happening in the education sector. And one key thing that has happened in the last few months is the Presidential Task Force, Madam Speaker. It is making proposals which would have found their ways in some of these regulations, Madam Speaker. The task force recommendations were blatantly ignored. They are totally ignored in these regulations. And Madam Speaker, that forms another basis for annulment of these regulations. Madam Speaker, there is a whole issue of the revocation of chartered to universities, Madam Speaker. That issue, Madam Speaker, denies the right that institutions, universities, and learning institutions do have in being able to enjoy the privileges that come with the charters that have been accorded to them. If they are revoked without due process, Madam Speaker, it is injurious to institutions, to their learners, and to the entire communities that are there, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, finally, I would like to say that the premium that we have put on university education in this country ought to be rethought. Madam Speaker, we are a country that is developing. We ought to start thinking about our technical secondary schools, our technical universities, our technical polytechnics, Madam Speaker, so that every learner that goes through high school should not be willing to just take up a professional course in the name of a degree. The degrees that we have produced in this country, Madam Speaker, have become a burden on the carriers of these degrees. If we proliferated our education in such a way that some of our students take up the professional courses, others take up some technical courses, we will find that there will be use for the youth who end up in technical courses in the development of our country. But today, every learner wants to go to university and get a degree that will condemn them to tammacking for years on end after being accorded that degree. So, Madam Speaker, even as we are annulling these regulations, maybe it is a wake-up call for us to rethink the entire policy around how we train our population for the future and the development of our country. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the proposal by the committee to annul these regulations in their entirety. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Julius Melly, member for Tinderet, but before you speak, allow me to recognize the following school. I wish to recognize the following school: the Catholic School from Langata constituency, Nairobi County. Welcome to the National Assembly.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the chair of the delegated committee and more specifically the membership. Honorable Madam Speaker, when you actually look at most of the regulations brought this House, in most cases, it speaks into issues that are very important to the running of the various sectors of this country. But Honorable Madam Speaker, one thing which has given this, many members in this House a surprise is that many of the officers will always try to develop regulations that are completely out of touch with the reality. Let me just point out that as a requirement, there is need for public participation in developing any regulation. The university's regulation that has been annulled, or actually which the committee seeks to annul, did not even come to the education committee as part of public participation, inputting, and even discussing it. This is a show of, I would say that there is a lot of impunity by the part of the ministry, and more so the State Department. They know very well that the members of the Education Committee, the members of the Fraternity of Education has to speak into every aspect of regulation, because it is very important that these regulations are discussed by the public, by the various stakeholders, and even the delegated legislature itself. You look at the regulation, some of the things that were passed in the Presidential Working Party are supposed to be aligned, because these regulations are aligned to those issues. But you realize that the regulations are so stale that they don't speak into the issues of the Presidential Working Party. A number of issues that the university's regulations are speaking into have actually been overtaken by the events. So, Madam Speaker, the chair of the delegated committee actually did it very well, and I want to commend him and ask him that in future, every other committee, more so the departmental committees, are supposed to speak to every regulations. The regulations on transport, the regulations on maritime authority, the regulations on agriculture, crops, and all the rest shall go to the relevant departmental committees for discussion, for adoption, so that the public are aware and actually brought into line. Looking even into the issues, there are a number of reforms that are going on in the education sector. Looking into the funding formulas, the CBC, and all that. If you look at the university's regulations, they have spoken very little into them. That means that these regulations are actually supposed to be annulled because they are outdated. I support the annulment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Karachuonyo, Honorable Andrew Akwome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I note that the Constitution is paramount. It is important. It lays down what must be done in order that we can be able to enhance, improve, and really put in order our education system. University is the final institution to which people go to obtain their degrees for the purposes of getting this country to develop and achieve many other goals. I see that when the regulations we are talking about were brought up, the procedure was almost ignored. There was no public participation, which is very, very essential and is in the Constitution. And that alone is enough reason to nullify this regulation before we even go further. Again, in Parliament, we have a procedure. We know what committee handles what and which other committee also, handles for the purposes of being in order. Because the procedure was not followed and because participation was not done, Madam Speaker, I totally support a nullification of these regulations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And I kindly request Honorable Member for Dagoretti South, Honorable KJ, pull out your card because you've spoken. Honorable, who else had spoken that has their cards here? Honorable Amolo Otiende, kindly pull out your card. So I'm left with only the people who have not spoken. It makes it easier for me. All right, and Honorable Atandi, remove your card because you had gotten a chance and you passed it. So pull out your card also. The Honorable Owen Bayer, member for Kilifi North. No, let's go. You've now dropped down to the list. Member for Kilifi North, Honorable Owen Bayer.
Honorable Speaker.
Then next we'll have Honorable Anthony Alwatch. I think you're next.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and also to pass my appreciation to the Committee of Delegated Legislation for the work they have done. Honorable Speaker, while many members agree with the committee, and I agree in the committee, that we annul these regulations in their entirety. But, Honorable Speaker, this begs certain questions beg some answers. One of them, yes, Parliament has Article 95, that we are the sole house to make laws. But again, the establishment of the delegated committee in this National Assembly shows that it is possible to have another body make law with the authority of this House. And that's why we have the Committee of Delegated Authority that looks at those laws and passes them. And we even have something called subsidiary legislation. Subsidiary legislation does not usurp the legislative authority of the House. And that is why regulations must always come to the House. But what keeps me asking myself this question is, and I want the Honorable Chepkonga, the chairman, to listen to this. For how long will this House continue to annul all regulations? For how long? Because every time Honorable Chepkonga stands to speak on regulations, he always says annul in entirety. Annul in entirety. Honorable Speaker, you once served as the Honorable Chair of this committee. I know you also said many annul, but there are times also where you said approve. Now, Honorable Speaker, let's
allow Honorable TJ Kajwang. What's your point of order?
Madam Speaker, you know in this House learning does not stop, but the majority leader, whom I have a lot of respect to, seems to have misconstrued the standing order, which is very clear that in all instances where Honorable Chepkonga comes to approve or accepts legislation, those set of legislations will not come before this House. They will just write a letter to the executive. And in so many cases, in fact, more than half of what they are doing, they are approving those legislations. But you will never see them come before the House. It is only when we annul legislations that it comes to this House. No wonder you now see so many annuls rather than approvals.
Thank you.
I think he is forgetting that.
Thank you, thank you. And it is true, and I want to...
Proceed, Honorable
I
Bayer.
agree. But I also want to say this, that why did the Ministry of Education develop these regulations? Because there's a lacuna somewhere. We need to fill certain gaps. And when they do it wrongly, and the ministries continue to do it wrongly, it behoves on us as Parliament to also, and chairs of departments, to also have a sitting with the executive and tell them what needs to be done. A lot of the times when we have these annulments is because of issues of procedure. Procedure that would have been corrected even before this matter comes to this House for annulment. So what I want to urge is chairmen of departments. Some of these ministers are new. They are greenhorns in what they are doing. They may not understand a lot of things. And at the same time, the technocrats in the ministry may not advise them properly. But I know the Cabinet Secretary for Education was a member of this Honorable House. He's a fine gentleman. I do not think he would fail to listen to the Honorable Chepkonga if we called him aside and said, you see, I've seen those regulations have issues, and we could help you to thrash them out and tweak them up so that they can be useful for the country. Now, a whole process, a lot of time has been wasted only to come and annul. The education system does not get better because we have annulled. It does not get better. The issues in the universities do not get a solution because we have annulled. We do not get solutions for the issues that demand that subsidiary legislation be made because we have annulled. They can only get better when we consult and look for solutions so that our young people in the universities who are suffering do not continue to suffer because a minister somewhere did not follow procedure. What I want to ask Honorable Chepkonga and his...
Honorable Chepkonga, what's your point of order?
No. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. You know the Deputy Majority Leader is my very good friend. You know, we are very progressive in our committee. In fact, when we bring to the House for annulment, we have exhausted all procedures, including recommending to them that they should go and amend. In fact, Madam Speaker, maybe the Majority Leader may not be aware. The Honorable Duale brought the peacekeeping regulations. We told him these regulations are very bad. 1, 2, 3. He said he purported to support the regulations. At the end of the day, he said, I agree with the committee. He withdrew the regulations, amended them. We brought to the House for approval. So what we do, in fact, most of the time, it's only that this minister, we told him that these regulations are not good. Go and amend the following. They came back with justification. How do you justify where you have not done public participation? Where you have no regulatory impact assessment? How do you justify that one? You know, we would like to support ministries, Madam Speaker, but they must comply with the law. We are not here to help them to comply with the law. They know what the law says. In fact, when you are appointed as a minister, you have the Attorney General, you have the state councils. You should be able to consult with even our own state councils within Parliament. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. You may proceed to complete, Honorable Bayer.
Let me complete. This mic, not this one. Okay. So what I want to say is that we need to find a solution for universities. We have a problem in universities. Today, a lot of our children are not going to school. They're not joining universities because of the issues that these regulations tried to address. So, and the role of legislation is our role as members of Parliament. And instead of waiting for subsidiary legislation, I want to urge the chairman who was here, the chairman and the vice chairman who have spoken on this motion, that why don't they take up the role? give the right path, because legislation is our role. If the minister fails to legislate, it is not him who has failed, it is Parliament that has failed. So if our children continue to suffer out there because of lack of proper law, because of lack of legislation or regulations, Parliament has failed in its role. I will not depend on a cabinet secretary to make laws, because that is not his mandate. So while they have annulled, I want to ask Honorable Meli and Malulu Ajendi, who is here, to take up the role, solve the issues that are there so that these problems cannot continue to be there. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I wouldn't want to be informed.
I think you exhausted your time. Okay, proceed, Honorable Otiende.
Well, I had wanted to raise the point of order, whether it's in order for the Deputy Majority Whip to condemn Parliament for having failed in its role, when he knows that the role for making regulations is not for Parliament. Every legislation indicates who makes the regulations. So it is for those people to make the regulations, then consult Parliament, not the other way around. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, now let's proceed. I think we are making progress. No, your time is over. Honorable TJ Kajwang, that's my place to say, it's not your place. Okay, I'll give you exactly 1 minute. And then we can move on to Honorable Anthony.
Honorable Speaker, I want to ask the senior counsel. He knows there are problems in education and he has said it. The role to make law in this country belongs to this House. I challenge you to go make the law and unhook the issues that we have in education, so that this country knows you are not just a good lawyer in court, but you're also a useful legislator. I thank you.
Okay, I think this is going very well. If we have few points of order, I think everyone will have an opportunity. I can see I have 11 requests. So we are going to Honorable Anthony Olwach, member for Mathare. Then we'll go to Honorable Mugambi, member for Buri. Then we go to Honorable Julius Ruto, member for Keses. And I think everybody will get a chance to speak who's left. But Honorable Julius Olosunkuli, please remove your card. You already spoke to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me also join my colleagues in thanking the Honorable Chepkonga and the committee for making these reports. And also join the Honorable John Kiarie for thanking Madam Speaker as the predecessor of the chair currently for a very good job done in the 12th Parliament, because it set a very good basis for what they are doing now. Madam Speaker, like the Honorable TJ has said, we are constantly learning, and I would have the benefit of learning from my senior Otiende Amolo on whether the House actually has no role in lawmaking. My respectful view is that all lawmaking pursuant to Article 94(5) belongs to this House, and that all other persons who exercise that role only exercise it in delegated format. They only exercise it in that format, and it does not mean that they become the lawmaker. The lawmaker under 94(5). Thank you, Senior Counsel. So I proceed to my main point. Madam Speaker, the role of the delegated committee, it plays a very important role in terms of checking the entities of government, including cabinet secretaries, board chairs, all of whom exercise that delegated role of subsidiary legislation, especially when they exercise it to make bad law, which, unless it comes to this House in a negative format, where now the delegated committee has to make a recommendation for annulment, would otherwise become law. I have heard the distinguished chair, Honorable Chepkonga, say that the delegated committee brings regulations for annulment only as a last resort. And even after begging the cabinet secretary to amend, that is when they bring it. That is very absurd. And I'm not saying absurd because I disagree with the chair. Absurd because under 94(5) we are the law-making organ, but yet we have to beg. a cabinet secretary, please relook this and bring it back in an acceptable format. It is for this reason, Madam Chair, that I think that the Statutory Instruments Act and our standing orders need to be relooked. And I think the Honorable Hohen Bayer sits in the committee that I sit of, House Rules and Procedure. And Madam Speaker, who has just vacated the chair, who chairs that committee, we have accepted a recommendation that I placed, that we amend the Statutory Instruments Act and we amend our standing orders to require that all regulation, whether affirmative or in the negative or in the positive, must find their way to this House, either by way of a report, so that this House may be able to stamp its foot of authority and say, proceed or do not proceed. That is the only way we can affirm our role under Article 94.5 and 95 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I also say this in light of provisions of the Constitution which I hope at some point we will be able to relook. Under Article 115.7, we allowed, and the Honorable Otiende Amolo was there, will give us the benefit of what was the reasoning, allowed the President to make law and act as a lawmaker through the back door by allowing what you call presidential reservations. So that when you cannot raise the 2/3 requisite as a House to disagree with the President, that provisions become law. It should be the other way around. When we pass a law, the President should raise 2/3 to disagree with us. That is when we will exercise the supremacy of this House. And we borrowed the model of the US presidential system. And the US presidential system has said, time without number, and I just want to quote, the Supreme Court of the United States, Clinton versus New York, where it said that line veto amendment is unconstitutional. You cannot allow part reservations or line amendment of a law that we have made.
Honorable Anthony Oloch, we have would you like to be informed by the Honorable Otiende Amolo?
Thank you.
Would you like to be informed?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Oloch. Madam Speaker, I wanted to invite to inform Honorable Oloch on two issues. One is in respect of what he sought my concurrence on. And indeed, I agree with Honorable Oloch, and Honorable Owen Bayer is wrong. Under Section 70 of the Universities Act, the power to make regulations is for the Cabinet Secretary. It is the Cabinet Secretary who must propose those regulations, then bring it to the Delegated Legislation Committee. It is not for the Delegated Legislation to generate them. It would be unconstitutional. And that's the first information.
Honorable Otiende Amolo, I know you are very smart, but are you informing the Honorable?
I'm informing the Honorable
member for Madare, or you are informing?
I'm informing the member for Madare because he concurred.
Deputy majority.
He had concurred with the majority, with the minority deputy whip. Anyway, the second information is to Honorable Lodge. In truth, the Constitution does not allow the President to make any law. The Constitution allows the President to make reservations to any law that we have passed. The bad practice that the presidents have had of proceeding to amend the law and present it is not in tandem with the Constitution. So do not blame the Constitution, blame the practice, and blame us as a House who allowed that to happen. Thank you.
Well, I hope that, just for neatness, I hope that the information that you have been given by the Honorable Otiende Amolo enriches your debate. What is out of order, Honorable Bayer?
Mentioned me. I would like to just to say, I agree with...
so now what is out of order, Honorable Bayer?
What is out of order is that he imputes improper, that I do not know what Section 70 says. I know what Section 70 knows, and I'm alive to it. And I know that the minister is supposed to make you regulations. Yes, that I know. But I also know that if the minister fails to make regulations, this House can stamp his authority and make law in the main law and not just subsidiary regulation. That can be done, and the Committee for Education can do it. So he should not think I know. Only he needs to be thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Baya. This is a house of debate, and he has gotten an opportunity to stick to what he had said. So, Honorable Member for Mathare, please proceed, conclude.
Thank you. Thank you, and I thank the Honorable Otiende Amolo for that information, that the reason that I was bringing the Clinton versus New York case was to demonstrate that what they said, that when you cherry pick a particular line in a proposed legislation sent to you for assent and propose amendment, that which they call line vetoing was said to be unconstitutional, and to the extent that we have that provision in our constitution that allows a similar mischief is unconstitutional. And I say it overall in the context that we cannot allow ministers and other entities to use the avenue of regulations to stick in things that are unconstitutional and go contra to our powers under Article 94. So I support the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member for Mathare. Honorable members, I would like to acknowledge, seated in the public gallery this morning, and Kasiti Primary School from Kajiado East, Kajiado County. Help me to welcome them to the house. Joy Nairobi School, Kikuyu Constituency, Kiambu County. You are welcome to the National Assembly to observe proceedings in the house. Honorable members, I would also like to welcome our students seated in the Speaker's Gallery this morning, Kabiro Secondary School, Dagoretti North, Nairobi County. You are welcome to the National Assembly. Honorable members, I would also like to communicate that order number 16, a motion on expansion of drug and substance abuse rehabilitation centers, order number 16, by the Honorable John Makali, Member of Parliament. He requested that it be dropped, and this was assented to by the Speaker, so it is therefore dropped. Honorable members, going back to the debate, we have the Honorable Mogambi Rindikiri. Member for Buri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I join the rest of the members in arguing that we annul these regulations in totality. Madam Speaker, let me thank the committee in charge because of putting a hawk eye on irregularities and illegalities in the decision making, particularly when the law is involved. Madam Speaker, it's very disturbing in as much as we would like to defend the position of our cabinet secretaries and the government. I think there are some obvious things that we cannot do as a house. Mr. Speaker, we cannot have a situation where one arm of the government is not respecting the other arm of the government in making decisions. Madam Speaker, the Kenya National Qualifications Authority is an established institution under the law. And therefore, when the ministry ignores their input when making regulations, it leaves a lot to be desired. Madam Speaker, this authority has the capacity to advise and consult when it comes to regulations on how best to run the universities. Therefore, Madam Speaker, with that, this is very important that the Cabinet Secretary reverts it back to his desk and start making proper decisions. Madam Speaker, any action which has element of costs to the community need to be taken very seriously. We have students, parents, guardians, and when we make a regulation that imposes cost to these people, it is very bad and it should not be allowed to happen. Madam Speaker, This animal called public participation, it is in the Constitution. I wonder what a special preference the ministry have that they cannot conduct public participation when making regulations. That's a very important element in the process of making the law and also coming up with the regulations. Madam Speaker, the Cabinet and Secretary of Education and his technocrats within the ministry have totally failed to conduct a public participation, and therefore this regulation cannot be passed. Madam Speaker, it is the time that now we take the issues of Parliament in as far as decisions of making this is concerned.
Honorable Rindikiri, what is out of order? Honorable Wanjiku Muya, member for Kipipiri. Please pass the mic to the member for
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm studying pursuant to Standing Order number 95. Looking at the debate, everyone is in agreement that a matter like this without public participation is null and void, and continuing to debate will be repeating ourselves, and as such, I'm requesting if you can ask the mover to reply.
Can I proceed, Madam Speaker?
I'll give a chance to the member for Mburi to finalize, then I'll find out whether it is the mood of the House that we
Madam Speaker, the future of education in this country.
Order members, the member for Buri shall be heard in silence.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, the future of education in this country depends solely on the decisions that we shall make as a country, and specifically those in charge of education. Madam Speaker, the education sector right now as it is in a lot of problems. Madam Speaker, we have had commissions formed. We have seen the president forming task forces, and once these task forces give the information, it is never taken into consideration. I therefore, Madam Speaker, argue that these regulations are dropped in totality. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I still have 10 requests, and I would like to find out whether it is the mood of the House that we make use of Standing Order number 95. Honorable members, I would like to put the question to find out whether it is the mood of the House that the mover be called to reply. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. So then, honorable members, I call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all the members who have contributed and those who intended to do so, because they were all supporting this motion. And so I'd like to thank them very much. And I'd like to assure the House that when we bring a regulation for annulment, we have approved another 13 or 15. And we report to the House every 3 months of all the regulations that the committee has approved. And we normally table here. So we recommend annulment of regulations on extreme cases where the regulating making authority refuses or rejects our proposal to revoke the regulations and amend them. For instance, even in this one, Madam Speaker, you know I am not very pro-annulment. I am always recommending to them, please, this one here, please kindly do so. But when they refuse, like they did in this one, seeking to justify why public participation was not held, why regulatory impact assessment was not conducted, we said, no, we will not agree, Madam Speaker. Because this is something that is affecting the people. It is in contravention of the Constitution, section Article 118, Article 10, Article 259, and Article 47. And so with those remarks, Madam Speaker, I move. I thank you.
You beg to reply? Honorable members, I now put the question, that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Universities Regulations 2023, laid on the paper of the House on Thursday, the 14th September 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of and pursuant to the provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and Standing Order 210-4B, announce in its entirety the Universities Regulations 2023, published as legal notice number 56 of 2023. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 15, motion. Consideration of the report on the proposed reduction of projected ceilings for Kenya Rural Roads Authority for the financial year 2024-2025 and 2025-2026.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. The Honorable Member for Ndia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopt the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on its consideration of the proposed reduction of projected ceilings for Kenya Rural Roads Authority, popularly known as KERA, for the financial year 24-25 and 25-26, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, that is yesterday, 26th September 2023. Honorable Speaker, just to give a background on this matter, on Tuesday, 22nd August 2023, the committee noted and deliberated on the contents of a communication from the Kenya Rural Roads Authority head office to regional directors regarding reduction of projected funding ceilings to the constituency roads for 22% and 15%, and to the critical roads from 10% to 6.8% in the financial year 24-25 and 25-26. Honorable Speaker, the committee resolved to invite the Director General of KERA and the DG for KRB to a meeting to deliberate on the matter. Honorable Speaker, in the afternoon sitting of the same day, that is Tuesday, 22nd August 2023, while rising on a point of order, the member for Nyando, Honorable Jared Okero, MP, raised the matter in the House and sought the direction of the Honorable Speaker. The Honorable Speaker, you directed that the leader of the majority follows up on the matter and responds before the House. And the leader of the majority issued a statement to the House in the afternoon sitting of Thursday, 24th August 2023. In his statement, he read a submission by the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport, Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, which indicated that the lower ceiling issued to KERA was made at a caution to safeguard the authority from early procurement of works and the resulting pending bills that may arise if the county governments are funded. The leader of the majority party also informed the House that the matter was now before the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure, and the committee would consider the matter further and report back to the House. Honorable Speaker, the committee, via a letter dated 28 August 2023, invited the DG KERA and the DG KRB to a meeting on 6 September 2023 But however, the Director General KRB via letter dated 1st September 2023 requested that the meeting be rescheduled to a later date. The DG gave a written submission, and the Director, that's the KRB, and the Director General for KERA also via letter dated 5th September 2023 requested that the meeting be rescheduled before concurring with submissions from KRB. But concurring with the submissions from KRB. The committee, having considered the submissions, received the ninth National and County Government Coordination Summit held in February 2023 in Naivasha, resolved that the Road Maintenance Levy Fund, popularly known as RMLF, allocation to the counties would be given consideration in the financial year 24-25 through a restructured process. Implementation of the resolution would entail amendments of the KRB Act 1999, which has not been done. Article 95 of the Constitution gives the National Assembly the mandate to enact legislation and determine the allocation of national revenue between levels of government. Honorable Speaker, according to the submission by the Kenya Roads Board and the statement by the leader of a majority party tabled in the House on 24th August 2023, the legal notice number 2 of 2016 classified the county road network in a national trunk roads, that is class S, A, B, and C, and county roads class D, E, F, and G. In this classification, KERA was given the responsibility of class C roads. And as such, counties became beneficiaries from the fund effective 2015-16 financial year based on County Allocation of Revenue Act 2015 and instructions from the National Treasury issued on 28th August 2015. In this regard, KRB allocated 15% of funds to the counties as conditional grant for 6 years up to 2021 financial year. However, effective financial year 2021-2022 maintenance of county roads was incorporated into the equitable share, and hence KRB stopped the conditional grants from the RMLF to the counties and reverted to the original formula as provided for in Section 6 of the KRB Act 1999. That is, KERA gets an allocation of 32%, which we call 22 and 10%, and KURA gets 15%, KENHA gets 40%, KWS gets 1%, and there's an allocation we call emergency intervention stroke CS allocation of 10%, and KRB gets an administration allocation of 2%. Honorable Speaker, having considered the submissions by the KRB and the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport, the committee observed that the communication by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority on the lower ceiling was only cautionary to prevent the resulting pending bills that may arise in the event that the county governments are funded from Road Maintenance Levy Fund in the financial year 2024-2025 and 25-26. The allocation for the financial year 2023-2024 have not and will not be affected by the communication. However, the committee notes that the communication by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority on the lower ceiling is inconsistent with the Section 6 of the KRB Act 1999, which provides for how the Kenya Roads Board will allocate funds. Honorable Speaker, the committee therefore recommends that Section 6 of the Kenya Roads Board Act 1999 provides that the board shall allocate funds from the Roads Maintenance Levy Fund as follows. And I think I gave the percentages. I don't have to go back there. The committee also recommends that the Director General for the Kenya Rural Roads Authority should withdraw the memo to regional managers and report back to the House within 7 days of the adoption of this report. Further, public officers should, and also, Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that public officers should refrain from issuing communications or circulars that have legal implications before the approval of Parliament. I think we agreed yesterday that it is only Parliament that has the mandate to change laws or make laws. And additionally, the committee also recommends that the Kenya Roads Board expedites release of funds. These are a bit different. Release of funds for financial year 2023-2024 to the road agencies. Honorable Speaker, having stated the above, I wish to request the Vice Chair of the Committee on Transport and Communication to second the motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair, please move the motion before you call the seconder.
I beg to move and ask the Vice Chair to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The committee is very clear that the communication to lower the ceiling was inconsistent with the law, and the committee has recommended that the said memo should be withdrawn immediately, and after withdrawal, they should report back to this House. Madam Speaker, it is very important, even as I second, for the House to know that any government agency that will purport to usurp the powers of this House in making laws, in making regulations, that is basically impunity, and this House must say no. We are, as a House, we should not allow agencies and civil servants to waste our time debating issues which are not in line with the law, and that they should stick to what the law says, because the people that made somewhere in Naivasha are not legally recognized by any laws in this country, and therefore their recommendations cannot just be copy-pasted to mean that that's the true position. Madam Speaker, without belaboring too much, I second.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on its consideration of the proposed reduction of projected ceilings for Kenya Rural Roads Authority for the financial year 2024-2025 and 2025-2026, laid on the table of this House on Tuesday, 26 September 2023. Honorable members, on my left, I'll give the first opportunity to the Honorable Otiende Amolo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for the avoidance of doubt, these are regulations are for annulment, not even withdrawal, as the Vice Chair has spoken about. It is for immediate annulment, so they are of no legal effect once we are done. Madam Speaker, the reasons are simple. First, these constitute an encroachment and overreach by this summit called the National and County Government Coordinating Summit. You cannot purport to make decisions that affect even constituencies and members of parliament, and they are not represented at that forum. Whatever forum that was for in Naivasha, they should have done whatever took them there, but not to touch on our jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, secondly, Section 6, as captured by the chair, is very clear. You cannot make regulations that contradict a substantive provision of the Act. That is a preserve of Parliament. And to purport to do so is actually in contempt of Parliament. Madam Speaker, the rationale cannot be deciphered. You cannot purport to reduce these provisions in order to make some provisions for the counties. County governments already are given money to make county roads. And most times they don't even do it. The citizens keep coming to us asking us about the very many roads. In fact, if any case was to be made, Madam Speaker, it would be for a case of increasing this allocation, not decreasing it. Let county government use the funds they have for the county roads that they ought to make. In most occasions, county roads are affected because most counties then subject that to the discretion of the MCAs. And most MCAs then make the, prioritize other things other than road. That is not the mistake of the members of Parliament. That is not the mistake of KERA in this funding. Madam Speaker, I want to submit that this funding under this scheme, just like CDF, is one of the only very few verifiably, important funds that help the citizens. Without CDF and without these funds, the citizens would suffer immensely. I want to submit, Madam Speaker, in closing, that to the extent that these regulations are made in contradiction of the Act, they are made without consultation of those affected, they are made without rationale, they are for total rejection with a caution that they must not try to do something like this again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senior Counsel. The Honorable John Mutunga, member for Tigania West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to the adoption of this report. Madam Speaker, right from the outset, it is okay for the counties to meet and talk. It is okay for them to make proposals. It is okay for them to come up with restructured processes of getting their own money. But it is not okay at all to encroach on boundaries that they should not. The money that we get through KERA, or as an apportionment of the resources as per this report, have been used very, very effectively. In fact, this is about the second most successful project that we have in this country. Besides the CDF, I think the Kenya Rural Loans Authority projects which we implement under the regional offices have been extremely successful. So first and foremost, we agree they can sit down and discuss their own issues, but they should not encroach on boundaries that they shouldn't. The second issue, as the honorable member stated, the Otienda Molo, we cannot have regulations purporting to change laws. It's supposed to be the other way around. I think laws regulations implement laws. So the regulations should be making it easier for the law to deliver, not to have regulations coming in to change laws. On the other hand, Honourable Speaker, the communication seems to state that there is a likely impact on the 2024-2025 allocation, the allocation for 2024-2025. In that case, we completely refuse this direction. We completely refuse any action in that particular direction. We would like this particular provision withdrawn, and we do not want any impact in that particular direction. Honourable Speaker, when it comes to rural roads and the way the provision has been, the success stories that we get, we would like to propose that even in the other sectors which have not been performing as much, and I have in mind the water sector, I have in mind the electrification sector, which do not have specific allocations, they should actually go this direction. We should have some money for water supply to our people so that we can be able to use equitability to supply water to our people. An allocation that is apportioned which is reliably, you know, and verifiably available every year so that you can plan for them. Even on the part of electricity, if you look at some of the areas in this country, some of them are below 40% in terms of the household coverage with electricity, while Kenya is at 75%. The question is, who is at 75%? It means if the average is 75% on average, then some people are already at 100%, others are 90%, 80%, but some others are 20%. And you wonder whether we are still living in the same country. And why has this happened? Because of this discriminatory way of apportioning resources. We would like some equitability. And the only way we can ascertain equitability is ensuring that people are given some resources that they can determine how they are going to be utilized. And the only way, the only way we can determine is having these resources regularly channeled to us, and we can be able to decide where they should go. So, Honourable Speaker, I fully support the annulment of that particular provision and that particular regulation, and also the return to the normalcy, a total withdrawal of the communication done by the the Director General of KERA on this particular communication. As a house, we do not accept such side shows. We would like the Director General of KERA to also acquaint themselves with the laws that are in this country that basically guide on how resources should be utilized and guide on the processes and functions of the different institutions, especially in its docket or within the ministry. And as such, Honourable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Tom Kajwang, member for Ruaraka.
Madam Speaker, there are too many competing interests. So many people trying to compete with us in the space of lawmaking. You start with the president. He wants to make laws through reservations and vetoing. You go to ministers, they want to claim the space of making laws through delegated legislation. There is one constitution which has said clearly that Parliament, under Article 95 and under Article 96, that Parliament has the sole making authority of legislation in this House. And so we have to speak on the rooftops. In every political pulpit that we get, we must preach this message, that they must know that the function of National Assembly and Senate is to make laws and nobody else. If you look at this issue that we are talking about, it came by way of a memo, a circular. I want to call out on the Director General of KERA. That is the person who actually penned this thing. He knows the law. He knows that he can't make regulations out there. And he knows that a memo or a circular itself, if it has the force of law, is a law-making instrument. And that is why when we were debating earlier here on delegated legislation, even a guideline must not be issued out there if it has a force of law without coming into this House. So if you want to make law, for heaven's sake, change the law. Just amend the law and we will be peaceful. Everybody will be happy. Now look at this report. There is this people called 9th National County Government Coordinating Summit. This is a body unknown to law. Which law incorporates this body calling itself 9th National County Government Coordinating? You know? Then I have a problem with these people called Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. If you read the report, it is these people actually who told the minister to amend the law. You know, the thinking, even looking at the thinking, is that the minister can change the law. The minister can't change the law, of course. It is us who must change the law. So this kind of, you know, people who want to feel big when they are themselves small, should be resisted at all costs. But let me go back to the KERA who actually wrote this thing. He must know wherever he is that we can even remove him from office for violating the law. This circular is in violation of the law. We can have a motion before this House to remove him and deal with him because he is violating the law. He couldn't have accepted to write this regulation. Now, Madam Speaker, I look at the recommendations, and I agree entirely with the Honorable Otiende Amolo that this is not something even which should be withdrawn. This thing should be obliterated. This thing should just, it is null and void. There is nothing to withdraw in a null and void piece of guideline. But there it is, the committee has proposed it, and it is not harmful. I think I want to support. But I also want to say that public officers, that is in 3, public officers should refrain from issuing communications. I think they just have to keep the law. If next time we find something like this, then I urge honorable members that we should not go this direction. Should just bring a bill here to impeach that officer from not following the law and trying to make the law through the back door. Then the last recommendation, which I think members of this House must agree to, that instead of talking about all these things, let them release funds for the year 2013, 2013 and 2014. This is what they should do, instead of making a lot of politics from nothing. I therefore support that we take this direction and censor very seriously the person that wrote this thing and the people who are conniving behind him. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Ruaraka. Honorable members, I realize that on this screen we have honorable members who may not be in the House. I would like to find out whether the Honorable Julius Ole Sonkuli is in the House. He is not in the House. So in that case, I'm going to call upon the Honorable KJ John Waweru.
Madam Speaker,
South.
Madam Speaker, I thank you profoundly. Madam Speaker, what we are doing here this morning is to actually remedy a mischief. We ought to ask ourselves, what mischief is this that we seek to remedy? When this matter was brought to the floor by the Honorable Member for Nyando, we realized that a number of things are happening. The first thing is, of course, that the executive is trying to legislate. But even more tragically, Madam Speaker, is the attempt by governors to try and reform the law to benefit counties out of a coffer that is actually a national government coffer. Madam Speaker, it is well understood that there are roads that are placed under the jurisdiction of the national government. There are those that are placed under the jurisdiction of county governments. Now, what is happening is that the county governments, which we had envisioned to be centers of economic development, are failing in the raising of their own revenues to a point that they are not able to attend to the needs in their counties, and now want to dip their hand in the coffers of the national government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the minister in question, a good friend of mine, is a great champion for devolution. And the Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen would tell us, when he would teach us about devolution, that we are seeking to have devolution so that counties are able to generate revenue on their own to be able to take up development from the counties. But Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, in the last 10 years, what we have seen is that counties have become overly dependent on the division of revenue monies that is allocated by this parliament, to the extent that the whole devolution conversation has been turned to how we share the cake, not how we bake the cake. And that is the mischief that we are trying to steal this morning, Madam Speaker, because that is the mischief that informed the move towards reducing these monies, the carer monies, on the vote of the national government, so that they can be redirected to the county government. Madam Speaker, if not for any other reason, those two reasons allow us to support the report that has been tabled here by the Roads Committee. Madam Speaker, if it was fairness, the natural thing that would be happening is that these monies should either be constant or increasing. It is even against the rights, Madam Speaker, of the people of Kenya to be reducing a vote of these monies that we know are very well superintended and a carer. So, Madam Speaker, beyond agreeing with this report, we are asking the Committee of Transport to take a further action. And the further action ought to be taken to inform KERA, to make sure that they withdraw the letters that they have written to the regions, to withdraw those, correct the mischief, and in fact, going forward, Madam Speaker, it should only be actioned by Parliament through the Substantive Committee of Transport. Madam Speaker, the very good minister has been a legislator, and the minister understands that we are the house that has the power to make legislation. If we want devolution to work, we should be strengthening the revenue raising ability of counties, not making counties totally dependent on national government. So it is our ask to the cabinet minister to also, instead of joining the bandwagon of dividing the national cake, to help these counties to also bring in the ingredients that will help make the national revenue. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the report, and I say a big thank you to the Committee on Roads under the leadership of the Honorable G.K. Kariuki. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kiarie. Honorable members, before I give an opportunity to our senior Honorable Kenyan, I would like to welcome, seated in the public gallery this morning, the following schools: All Kejuado High School, Kajiado Central, Kajiado County. 2, Light International School, Langata Constituency, Nairobi County. 3, Nairobi University students from Starehe Constituency, Nairobi County. You are all welcome to observe proceedings in the National Assembly. Honorable members, the next opportunity now goes to the member for Eldas, the Honorable Adan Keynan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this House is under threat. Madam Speaker, some of us have been in this House for quite some time, since the 8th Parliament, and some of the key institutions that have benefited members of Parliament and their constituencies are institutions like CDF, KERA. I do not want to delve in the politics of the formation of KERA, KURA, KENA, and the KRB. But I'll tell you, as members of Parliament, we have reached a stage where today any busybody attempts to take away the constitutional mandate of members of Parliament, and this trend has started from the 11th Parliament, the 12th Parliament, and here we are, the 13th Parliament. A mere entity goes, instead of discussing this thing during the pre-budget debate, and I'm glad that the chairman is here, these issues are now being made a debate after the budget has already been passed. That itself tells you that there is mischief. If you look at even the framers of our Constitution, Madam Speaker, Article 1, sovereignty has been equated to representation. And here is an entity, they do not want to know the existence of the statutory act. They do not want to know the 4 key constitutional mandates of the Member of Parliament. They just sit in an office, negate what has already been given. I'll tell you where I come from and where Honorable Corre and Honorable Sene come from. The only roads that we have seen since independence are KERA roads. The only roads that we have seen are KERA roads. And here is an entity now just decides out of the blue to withdraw what we got. In fact, in the 11th Parliament, Madam Speaker, there was an attempt to merge KERA with KENA. Those who are in Parliament will tell you this. We refused. We refused and say no KERA, no representation. And there was a justification. The justification was there are roads that these other agencies, for those of you, Madam Speaker, before 6 years ago, if you ask a child from my village what a tarmac road is, the definition was a black substance found in down Kenya. That definition has to be negated, while I'm still the representative of those people. And this is not the attitude. I want to tell you, you members of Parliament, and all of us here, slowly we have lost our mandate, our grip on national issues. When a non-constitutional entity in the name of an amorphous group that brings together governors and other groups decides to sit under a tent and say, withdraw the mandate, the constitutional mandate of members of Parliament. And here we are. Even this report is made by the chairman and members of the Transport Committee. This report should have sanctioned
An individual should have dealt so that it serves as a lesson to others who will be actually intruders. We are asking for the withdrawal, so what? You ask them to relieve funds, so what? Those are issues that ought to have been done. But I think in future, madam, there's an attempt. And this is one thing that we must resist. Once upon a time when we were elected, even the staffer here was a police officer. Your clerk was a CID officer. Your clerk, the deputy clerk, was a special DO. We fought over the years to give Parliament its true independence. Don't allow it during your time. For those of you who are serving under the committee, this very important committee, the transport, and I'm glad that my friend Sene is here and he comes from that particular area, the Honorable GK, don't allow this negation. It doesn't matter the consequence. And that is what it means to be truly the representative of the people of Kenya. Attempts will be made. If you ask Biden right now today, just last week, they had a challenge. There was a stalemate. No elected government is ever happy with a functioning, truly democratic parliament. So I want to urge you, as you do this, Madam Speaker, these recommendations are a bit mild. Sorry to say this. What we expect the chairman, July, August, September, October, the first quarter is already gone. The first quarter of the financial year is already gone. And we're already dealing with pre-budget issues. What are you telling us, Chairman? Bring this book to these individuals to book. Let our allocations increase. The issue of governors, they have enough. You have given them enough allocations. Let them deal with whether they have. In future, no entity in the name of what should be allowed to make decisions on behalf of members of parliament without representation. If it is an issue of road, the chairman and his team should be called to represent members of parliament in that particular entity. Otherwise, that group seated somewhere making decisions on behalf of parliament, Mr. Speaker, will be an affront to our existence. I want to conclude by saying this. Each one of us is here for a purpose. That purpose must not be lost simply because somebody is not happy with the existence here.
Please give him a minute to wind up. 1 minute.
So thank you. Chairman, the bit we are trying to say is...
Honorable Kainan.
Thank you. The executive is not...
for 25 years.
The executive is not represented here. You are our embodiment. Chairman and your team, stop being mild. Stop being mild. That committee, our representative on GAF, CDF, and this committee must truly represent the interests of members of parliament and their electorate at all times, regardless of political pressure. So, Chairman, after 7 days, what? That communication, that bureaucratic approach, first quarter will be over. Not first quarter, actually. The first 6 months will be over. So what will members do now? Chairman, we really want you to this. This report is mild. I want to urge my friend Otieno Omol. I think if time allowed, we will have brought an amendment to name some of the individuals, to bring timelines, and say within this, the first quarter should reach their constituencies. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kainan. Honorable members, bear with me. I can see a lot of interest in this motion. I know that you have 5 minutes to debate. If you decide to speak for less than 5 minutes, then more of you are going to speak. I was looking for the Honorable Gekaria on my right, but I can see that he's seated somewhere on the left. You may proceed, Honorable Gekaria.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order, member for Wajir North. Honorable Gekaria came to this house much earlier than you, so he will be allowed to speak.
He's still a young man, so forgive him. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First of all, I want to thank, last week when we were in some seminar in some place, Honorable TJ Kajwang, he schooled me on what the lower courts, the jurisdiction of the lower courts, the High Court, Court of Appeal, as we go up. And we want to thank you, Honorable TJ. You have stated the facts of law. May I want to state the facts, the issues on facts on the ground as they are. Honorable Speaker, first of all, is in the 11th Parliament, and Honorable TJ Kajwang has indicated, we tried to bring some of these roads to be classified through the normal process of legislation. But, Honorable Speaker, of that, it is called the COG, they went to court to stop that process of us legislating to make those roads, because, Honorable Speaker, there is no way roads which were maybe not being used in the 60s, 70s. Currently now there are some roads which needs to be brought to the bitumen level or to be upgraded so that, because they have become very important roads. But the COG went to court and they tried to stop that, Honorable Speaker, and that has been now the reason of the current very bad, poor state of our roads. In that, Honorable Speaker, August 2015, as indicated in the report, the county governments were given a conditional grant of 15%. But, Honorable Speaker, as a few of my colleagues have indicated, if you go and see the reality on the ground, Honorable Speaker, you'll be shocked. And I know because you're a member of a single constituency, you know what they do at your county. I hope they are not different from what happens in our counties. Honorable Speaker, the status of our roads are very bad. Because when the county undertake to do those works through the monies that they've been given through the Kenya Roads Board. Honorable Speaker, in my constituency, for example, and in a ward where I come from, there are engineers, the civil engineers, they indicate if you are dumping, say, 20 tons of maram, up to what meters you do space. But, Honorable Speaker, you'll be surprised. A truck of 20 tons goes around 50 meters. And then it is spread. What happens to that road, Honorable Speaker? Within a week, it has gone back to its status. And monies have gone equivalent to what now Kera is doing currently. And that is the horrible status of, and I want to agree with Honorable KJ. Counties, because of the revenue allocations through the formula that we have passed here in Parliament, they have become dependent, overly dependent on what is sent. So what they are supposed to collect, they have given, either they collect and they put it in their pocket, and they don't care whether they collect or not, as long as now some monies on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis will be sent down to the counties for them to. So they've become dependent on monies that they don't even care to find, thanks to devolution, all the time that they have to be given. Honorable Chair, I happen to be a mayor sometimes back in 2010. And we were only, Latif was the only money, around some 50 million. And it was making a huge difference. Now they are getting into the worst part, Honorable. Yesterday, I had to give 10,000 for a boy who was an MCA given trucks. What has happened to the counties? They've bought trucks, they have bought graders. When you give this money from KRB, it goes towards repairing of the same graders and trucks which never go to the ground to be able to address the maintenance of these barabaras. And that is the worst status. In my county, they have bought things that it is just repairs, and there is no repair. A repair of some battery costs around 100,000 and things like that. Yesterday I had to give 10,000 for an MCA given a truck, but there is no fuel. So he had to get that money to get fuel, get some sand from some place, dump, and put some little money into the grader. That is the situation on the ground. And I totally agree with the committee. Please, don't allow these things to happen. Otherwise our roads are going to be no more roads, but just something else. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Ibrahim Sanei, member for Wajir North. Now it's your opportunity.
Thank you, Madam. I'm dissuaded from discussing county government, but rather perplexed with the disdain in which statutory organs have for the rule of law. And that comes to KRB and other entities. Madam Speaker, as my chairman has put it, the lower ceiling isn't really a cautionary, it is an abuse of the existing law. There is a hierarchy of laws in Kenya. The Constitution, statutes passed by this parliament, subsidiary laws, thereafter presidents and other things follow. There can't be any other laws. Regulations are so inferior to statutes. And I can't see how a subsidiary by an entity, an amorphous body in Naivasha, can overturn a statutory statement in our laws. Madam Speaker, The kernel of this debate, or my argument, is that corruption has gone to a level where impunity of the law is at the center of it. We can't allow this to happen as a committee. The minister is duty-bound, being a lawyer, to make sure that there is fidelity for law. This is not a bargain, neither negotiable. And the biggest monster in the road sector is Kenya Roads Board, an entity whose income is not identifiable to the extent we can't really know how much they make. They throw money center, left, and right. They distribute resources. This house is not seized of that matter. We don't know their budget and how they distribute to each constituency in this country. They are multi-billion entity, so rich, yet it is taxpayers' money. The so-called road maintenance levy fund must be dealt with once and for all. If it is not dealt with, then Kenya Kwanza government will never deal with corruption. If RMLF will not be brought to the floor of this house and legislated upon. With those few contributions, I support the chair's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Nelson Wamboka.
First of all, Honorable Speaker, I must say I'm very disappointed. You keep asking why you don't have quorum in this house.
Honorable Wamboka,
No.
you are out of order.
Just allow me to
You are out
express
of
my
order.
disappointment.
I will encourage you to go direct to the debate.
But you know you cannot gag me, Honorable Speaker. I must
You are out of order,
express
Honorable
my
Wamboka.
disappointments. We cannot be coming here very early and people come very late and you allow them to
You are
speak
out of
before
order,
us.
Honorable Wamboka.
But at
Please
least you
proceed
have.
with the debate.
I want to support.
And please take note that earlier I had wanted to give you an opportunity and you are out of the house. You are in the list of those who are out of the house. So I give you an opportunity and with a lot of respect, please just proceed with
Honorable
the debate.
Speaker, I want to support this motion. I want to support the report by the Able Chair, Gigi. Indeed, I want to pick it up from where our senior, Kainan, left it. Mr. Chairman, make it very difficult for someone next time to try and joke with this house. Please don't stop there. You know, a kangaroo gathering somewhere cannot sit to usurp powers of this house, and on that strength, a DG makes far-reaching recommendations that are going to affect our operations as members of this parliament. Honorable Speaker, in our constituencies, Kera performs better than county money in terms of roads. Many a times we've been forced to do county roads. I'm doing about 5 of them this time under special funds, Honorable Speaker, from Kera. We do not see where the money for counties go. In fact, Mr. Chairman, look at ways of how we are going to increase this fund, because it is the only working fund on the ground, Honorable Speaker. And it is shame that governors are unable to manage that which they have, and they feel they can come and grab that which we are trying to manage, Honorable Speaker. Kera money is the only money that works on the ground. If you ask the people, in fact, a lot of these county roads, governors are hiding behind us, because we are the people who are asked in meetings. When you stand anywhere in a function, when a road is bad, people even don't go for the governor. They come for the member of parliament, Honorable Speaker. Let's legislate effectively to ensure that we have a way of this fund increasing periodically, after a year, after 2 years. Let's let the money keep increasing, so that not only can we be handling earth roads, but we are able to even handle the tarmac roads, Honorable Speaker. It is absurd, totally, you know, unimaginable how this DG is still existing in his office. Honorable Chairman, crack that man. In fact, we want that DG to come in your committee, summon him here, so that he should answer questions, na ili iwe funzo kwa wale madiji wengi wakora ambao wanafikiri watatumiwa na executive kuendelea kudunisha jumba hili.
Honorable Wamboka,
yes,
please use parliamentary language. Wakora is unparliamentary.
Honorable Speaker,
and also you are mixing languages.
I'm guided, well guided.
I know that you have waited for a long time.
Yes.
Just compose yourself and finalize your debate.
Well guided, Honorable Speaker. Well,
first
well
of
guided.
all,
Please add me a minute.
Withdraw Wakora.
Okay, withdraw the Wakora. But Honorable Speaker, we want to serve a bitter lesson to anybody who would imagine that they can use the executive to try and micromanage this House, Honorable Speaker. I support, and I support this report. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nelson Wamboka. Honorable members, I am going to give an opportunity to the female legislators. I am giving an opportunity to the Honorable Wanjiko Mohia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And just for the information of the House, I had stepped outside because there are some unusual things at the gate of Parliament where deaf community is gathering there, claiming to see all of you, but I have attempted to see them on your behalf because they want you to embrace the sign language and make it a bill in both houses. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I support this report from the committee. But Honorable Speaker, I want us as a House to take a minute and think if we really use the Parliament time appropriately. We have just ended the debate on university regulations, where the Cabinet Secretary and the team had made regulation and published in spite of the chair having informed them in the right manner. Now here we are again, and this House have been putting question statement, majority leader have been speaking of the same. The committee have to sit down on a matter like this while the country is suffering on many other avenues, just because someone in an office put a memo or a letter without consultation. The principle of public participation in the Constitution must be adhered to by all leaders. Honorable Speaker, this money, the 42 million that go to the constituency, is so little, and in fact I have a bill in front of this committee where I should be presenting tomorrow, for us as members of Parliament to give substantive road network in our constituencies. We have some counties where rain pattern is year in, year out. For instance, where I come from, we have rains until January. We have some counties in northern part of Kenya where an estimated road of 3 kilometers will require double or triple of the money allocated because of the length. And all these issues have never been considered. So as we discuss, we should be discussing how to increase this money. We can see the percentage as enumerated from KERA, KURA, KWS, Kenya Road Board, but there is a money on emergency, 10%, honorable members. I think it is time, as a House, we revisit the use of this 10%. And I think this is where the increase should come from. If calculations are done very well, Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure we have good mathematicians in this House, we can get 5% from this 10%. And this can work as an affirmative action to counties where the rain patterns are frequent, and to the counties where the roads network are also very, the length is very, very long in terms of the distance. And if we get the affirmative increment of 2.5% to each counties, the ones in the dry areas and with the significant distance, the ones which are raining all the time, the topology is black cotton and the like, then we would be even in a better position. Having said that, I think the counties, while I restrain myself to discuss about the counties, has also, it is time that they also demonstrate their leadership. Time and again, where there is Mataga there, you'll find a member of parliament is the one making that small road. While there is any emergency, you'll find a member of parliament is the one making those roads from the small savings. Yet those roads clearly belong to the counties. But we have not seen them make the small roads of 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, to make our constituencies experience the transport for people to move their market, food to the market and enjoy the businesses. Honorable Speaker, I have one road called Captain Wajohi Geta Donyojero Road, which is a nightmare. And Kera is aware of this. Honorable Speaker, you find a road is made with 7 to 10 years and it is never complete. I think the honorable members from this house are suffering from the roads that they maintain and the roads that are even made by Kera, and it can only be fair if this money is increased and not even reduced 1 shilling. And we have...
Thank you very much, Wanjiku Muhia. The Honorable Julius RUTO, member for cases.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also put up my point in support of the Committee on Roads and Transport on recommendation of rejection or withdrawal with total indictment on the proposal brought forward by the Kera. Madam Speaker, we all agree. We come from constituencies where day in, day out, our duty is to engage our electorates. The challenges people are going through in terms of roads, the withered roads that are common in our constituencies, Madam Speaker, you cannot comprehend. Proposal to reduce what Kera has been doing, because what Kera has been doing is tremendous work that are commendable. In fact, I dare ask that we would need to see the reports, audit reports undertaken by Kenya Road Sport on what the output of Kera as compared to the other agencies that are in place, like including roads done by county governments. To reduce allocation or ceilings for Kera in the quest to increase the allocations going to county government in itself is defeating. In any case, the function and the goals is not competitive because all is adhered towards serving the common mwananchi. County governments are privileged in terms of their allocations, and if you witness every county government, they have acquired enough equipment within their administration. But we all understand they are still going through a lot of challenges. Policy of implementation and management of the same assets is in problem. Because most of this equipment, you will find that they are being misused or abused. And that the output of the same cannot be compared with the output of much that Kera can do. And therefore, it's a calling on the agencies to uphold their competency in their work. Because Kera is established by law under Kenya Road Sport Act of 2007 with clear mandate and responsibility. Going forward, to negate the responsibility and the provision of the same law that was given by this parliament, and to proceed and introduce additional subsidiary legislation that negates that responsibility or that defeats the powers they draw from the same constitution in itself. Madam Speaker, I want to agree with one member who said that is null and void. And therefore, even us continuing to debate on what we know it is null in itself is even a waste of time. We just need to communicate to the CS that forthwith within 7 days, that communication should have been cancelled and a new communication should have been brought forward to the agencies to begin to plan their work plan for the financial year 2024, 2025 and henceforth, basing on the new ceiling or on the project, on the increasing projection. Because
our revenues are increasing day in, day out. If you look at the projection of the preceding years as where we are now in terms of revenue collection in this country, they are on the positive trajectory going up, and therefore even allocations and ceiling should be increasing. So, Madam Speaker, I want to stand and to support that what KERA is initiating to do in itself is going against the principle of the laws of this republic. And therefore, as this House, we need to stand and to ask them to work with this honorable House. We want to ask them to ensure that they stick to their role and mandate, and matters to do with budgeting process be retained to be the purpose of this particular House, and to ensure as way forward we are going, let every agency do their work accordingly. What county government needs to do is not to come in and scoop what is in the coffers of national government. Let them stick with their resources, what have been provided for. If it's a question of increasing their resources, it's not by suppressing the works of the other agencies, by reducing their allocations just to meet their demand. Let them work on their own source revenue, and as the national government resources are growing, let the Constitution of Kenya be upheld on the way resources have to be increased on what is going to be going to county governments, not by suppressing other agencies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, member, honorable member. The Honorable Dick Maungu, member for Luanda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity given. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the report from the Departmental Committee on Transport in regard to a letter that emerged from KERA and sent to regional directors that led to reduction of proposed funds to our regions or constituencies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as it has been said, KERA does a lot of good work, great job in our constituencies. And therefore, any attempt, deliberate or otherwise, that might move towards reducing what KERA gets in the regions, Madam Speaker, will be detrimental to the welfare of our communities, the progress of our societies, and the good of our networks down there, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's good to note that the Roads Act of 2007 that brought into existence KERA and other road agencies, and the Roads Act of 1999 that did indicate the role of KRB, it is very clear that the mandate of KERA, Madam Speaker, sorry, it is very clear that the mandate of KERA is to connect or maintain the road network in the rural areas, also the devolved areas, Madam Speaker. And therefore, KERA has done great ever since it came into existence in 2007. What KERA has been able to achieve is clear, it is loud and clear all across the country. Anytime you visit a constituency in this country, you will see significant improvement in road management, significant improvement in the management of our road corridors, courtesy of what KERA has been doing, Madam Speaker. And therefore, the best we can do is to support or well finance this entity so that they can improve on the good work they are doing. And therefore, a caucus sitting in Naivasha on the 8th of August, a kangaroo sitting for that matter, moves on to make laws or propose legislation that will reduce what goes to KERA, Madam Speaker, should be rebuked at all levels, and such should never be allowed to continue, Madam Speaker. Having been said that, Madam Speaker, the 2% that KERA has been receiving over the years has done much. And Madam Mohia, member for Nyandarua, has just spoken about the 10% that is left to the CS. How we wish that such monies would be added to what KERA is getting so that this KERA can do much better roads in the constituency and improve our networks. And therefore, the originator of this memo, as has been captured, should be called to withdraw the memo with immediate effect. Should be instructed that never again should he take instructions from a kangaroo sitting. Never again should he take instructions from a meeting that is not anchored in law to give to regions, Madam Speaker. It is only this House that is mandated to give laws. Only this House can give instructions in matters law, and we can only get authority, any government agency can get authority from the resolutions of this House, Madam Speaker. And therefore, any sitting, a caucus or a kangaroo meeting anywhere, can therefore not purport to give instructions or to give directions as to how funds can be managed, Madam Speaker. And therefore, with all humility, I want to rebuke and say that that should never ever be allowed again. And going forward, we need to kind of ring fence this. It's already ring fenced by the law. And therefore, we should not allow that the county government can stretch its hands into what is not within their ambit, Madam Speaker. That notwithstanding, this House was never represented in the meeting that sat in Naivasha. This House that makes laws was not part and parcel of that meeting, Madam Speaker. And therefore, a meeting that excludes us can therefore not interfere or kind of direct what this House should do, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I stand to support the committee and request that never again should we allow such resolutions outside this House to instruct our DGs and accounting officers otherwise than that it should appear in law. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Joseph Nyakundi, member for Kitutu, Chache North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I also want to support the Committee on Infrastructure on this issue. There is no way that IBEC can come and make laws and budgets for this House. There is no way. It is only this House that is mandated to make laws and to make budgets. So the meeting that was held in Naivasha, we were not consulted. We don't know about that meeting. So there is no way that money that is for Kera roads can be reduced, especially the 22% that goes to our constituencies, from 22% to 16%, and the 10% allocation to 6%. That is not the work of Kera. And the Director General for Kera should have gone by now, should be at the Committee for Infrastructure and answer questions. The Cabinet Secretary, who is my very good friend, is not the one who's supposed to make laws. And there is 10% for the Cabinet Secretaries for special funds. This money is the one that is supposed to go to the counties if there is any money that is supposed to be taken there. So we don't allow these things, and we will not accept. The mandate of Parliament should not be given to any other person. And we know Kera has been doing very good job for the last couple of years in our roads. There is no way county governments can be given this money, because even this county government, we don't see the work they are doing. They are given a lot of allocation, and we are the ones who give them this money that goes to the county government. But we don't see the work, the money we give them is doing in the counties. Even small roads that are 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, that are supposed to be done by the county government. And these county governments have bought equipments that are supposed to do these roads, but there is nothing that they are doing. So we will not accept, and I want to commend the Infrastructure Committee led by the member for Ndia, and I want them, we will support them through thick and thin. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The next opportunity, honorable members, goes to the Honorable Gideon Ochanda, member for Bondo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Outrightly, Madam Speaker, I support the report, but I want this to go on record that I'm not very happy about the recommendations. They are too mild. Madam Speaker, if you look at this report adequately, there is the issue of malice and illegality. Malice in the sense that DG Kera and Kera itself has gone ahead and issued letters to the regional managers on 22nd of August, based, number one, on a proposal. Who informed the DG if the proposal is placed to go ahead and start issuing administrative orders? Number two, Madam Speaker, why it is malice. The summit recommended or talked on something to do with the 24-25 financial year. Why should the DG act on the year 23-24, even if he were to act? So those two indicates very clearly that there's malice in this thing. The illegality, that is very clear, members have spoken to this. Illegality is in the sense that here we are, there is a law in place, and the DG puts aside all these things and issues letters to his junior officers. I think this is basically illegal. Madam Speaker, the other thing that we need to look at is the summit. When the summit is recommending eating into what the roads board has, or fuel maintenance levy fund, when you look at that against the whole idea that counties have their own monies and they budget for it annually like any other, like the national government, why don't they have that in their budgets? But on the other hand, Madam Speaker, why shouldn't the summit look at the audit in terms of the 6 years that there were grant funds to the county government? What did those monies do in the 6 years? If they didn't do that audit and they didn't bring us a proper report, or a report was not out in terms of how the counties used the grant for the 6 years before 2021, I think there's no any other reason why any other money should be taken to counties from road maintenance fuel levy fund. So, Madam Speaker, in my view, the recommendations are a little bit mild, and we needed to go in some more harder recommendations, such that the DG of Ukura is punished a little beyond what is recommended here, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, finally, if there is a fund that all the departments needed or ought to have borrowed from, it is this fund that goes to roads. If all the departments of government, if all the budgets that we place annually for all departments were to have a portion that is destined to constituencies directly, even if all of them were just talking about 10% or even 5%, in principle, that would be the best that we can do to this country. That's exactly where the roads fund is helping a great deal. The 32% that we are talking about that goes to Kera is the only money that we see in roads in the rural areas. There's nothing else. And I can tell you that there are certain constituencies that don't have anything to do with Kenya, they don't have anything to do with the Kura. The only money they see, or the only funds that are available for purpose of their roads, is this 32%. So if somebody talks about reducing something that is not enough, I think first of all it's also not logical. So, Madam Speaker, I support the report, but I'm not too clear in terms of how the recommendations were done, because I think they're so mild. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Mary Emase, Member for Teso.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Actually, I was about to stand on a point of order because I heard you say you are giving to the female members of parliament opportunity. Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I want to join colleagues in supporting the report of the Committee on Roads and Infrastructure. And the importance of this roads levy, the 32%, cannot be overemphasized. For county governments, through a kangaroo or a MOFAS outfit that has no authority in law within which any allocation can be anchored on, to purport to reduce the amount to be taken to counties is saddening. Honorable Speaker, in fact, I want to say Honorable Gikari is lucky he's able to get a vehicle and fuel. In my county, I speak to my MCS even just to borrow a vehicle so that I can fuel a grader so that we can open a road in areas that are inaccessible when we have funerals. I have to go into my pocket in certain instances to just prepare a road for that area for them to be able to access to transport their bodies. So for the DG Kera and the county or IBEC to make a proposal to reduce this amount, this is it's something that has never been heard of, and it's unacceptable. In fact, I want to say, to agree with the member who is saying the recommendations are a bit mild, in fact, when we summon the DG, let it be a plenary sitting so that all members can be able to ask questions on the floor of this house. That money needs to be enhanced, and the only house that has got the authority and the power and the mandate to make any legislation is this house. And so no one can purport to usurp our powers. So, Honorable Speaker, I support the sentiments. That money has got to remain where it is, and it has to be enhanced, and we cannot tolerate otherwise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mary Emase. Honorable members, before we go to the Honorable Jessica Mbalu, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome seated in the public gallery this afternoon SVAC Community School in Embakasi Central, Nairobi County, and Najile Boys Secondary School from Kajiado West, Kajiado County. You are welcome to the National Assembly. The Honorable Jessica Mbalu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on the debate on the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure, led by my very good able member, friend, Mr. John Kariuki. Madam Speaker, allow me also thank the committee for coming up with this report, for annulling the increment as proposed of not increment, the reduction of the carer funds. Madam Speaker, I want to say that it is only this parliament. We have been there within the 11th parliament, 12th parliament, and now the 13th parliament. And it's only the parliament that can make laws. It's only this parliament that will make sure that we either amend, and in the purpose of amending, I will propose that we increase the carer money from actually 32%. Madam Speaker, when you get to our constituencies and most of the constituencies in the country, the 22% constituent roads and the 10% of the critical link roads, Madam Speaker, these are the only roads we see visible. And you can see the roads that have been made. We have engineers, we have the people who come and inspect the roads, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think this was a way of trying to attempt to either kill or disrespect Parliament. The CS has been a member of Parliament and the Senate, and he understands what the roads make and mean. The President has been a member of Parliament, and he knows what roads, how the roads, what it means to the people. Madam Speaker, the Section 6 of the Kenya Roads Board Act, 1999, it provides the board shall allocate funds from the roads maintenance levy. And they have outlined as follows: Kera 32%. We have gone to Kenya Urban Roads, Tekura 15%. And I can tell you most of the constituencies benefit only from Kera. I come from Kibwesi's constituency, where people from Zambani, Kambu to Darajani, all the way to Lukanya University, Madam Speaker, and they have benefited from this carer. And those roads are smooth. My women are being taken to hospital by their ambulances in a smooth road. Border people are using very smooth roads from carer, and of course they are using little money in terms of fueling, in terms of maintenance of their borders. Madam Speaker, this must be an abuse. To reduce the carer funds, I think every member in this house says no. Madam Speaker, the Director General, I don't know who advised him in his memo, which the Parliament, and I'm sure is watching, the Parliament is not supporting. So he must get a different advisor to advise him on the work of the Parliament, how we separate duties of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. This house must be respected. We have been elected by people to come and represent them. And that's why on the floor that says, I support the committee on annulling the report. Madam Speaker, in fact, the funds, as I said, should be increased and released. The rains are about to start. The roads are pathetic, and our people need to use roads. They are Kenyans, and we are all Kenyans, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I agree with my fellow members of Parliament that even these recommendations are very mild. We should have a strong recommendation, including having like a mkuja and calling upon the DG either to explain to him how the law is made, to give him a report on the benefit of these carer roads to our constituents, the people of Kenya. The county government should do their work. They expedite the release of funds for the financial year 2023-2024 on the road and and of course supporting my fellow members of parliament. This is null and void, and I support the committee. Congratulations to the committee chair. Congrats to your committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jessica. The Honorable Member for Buri, Honorable Rindikiri Mugambi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have some hecklers by me, but they are my friends. Madam Speaker, I've had the advantage of being a member of the committee of loans last parliament. And I really understand the laws and responsibilities of the Director General of KELA and the laws and responsibilities of the Cabinet Secretary. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the conclusion of the committee. First, it is in law you cannot reduce the percentage of allocation. It must be presented to this parliament for approval. Kenya Loans Board makes recommendation on the movement of percentage based on the volume of money that they collect. Madam Speaker, the Kenya Loans Board also makes recommendation as how much is allocated to the Cabinet Secretary. In this case, the Cabinet Secretary is allocated 2%. Madam Speaker, if we are to have any reduction, it must follow the approval of this parliament. I see a lot of impunity, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary that National Assembly is not the Senate. And if he feels it is good to be in court with the governors, let him do that, but not to interfere with the operations of KELA, not to interfere with the responsibilities of National Assembly. A committee of governors cannot appropriate money on behalf of the National Assembly. It has never happened and should not be given any opportunity. Madam Speaker, we know the volume of fuel levy is increasing. The percentage need to remain, if not increased. Why are they scared of the constituencies being given more money? We need that money because members have expressed themselves that it is only KELA money that is in operation in our constituencies, Madam Speaker. And I would like to challenge the governors and the CS and DG KELA to provide a list of all the loans that the counties have done for the last 6 years. We will present the loans that we have done for the last 6 years and let Kenya know, because they already know, that the only loans they see are those loans that have been done by KELA through members of parliament. Madam Speaker, the problem that we're having is that we are creating centers of power, people to be seen to be working. Madam Speaker, the DG of KELA, from the last report I have, he is not supposed to be in the office. Madam Speaker, the problem is not even the DG. This must have come from somewhere else. And that's what we need to deal with as a house. I have a lot of respect for the CS of loans as far as the law is concerned. I have also regard because he is very responsive on social media. But on this specific matter, I have no regards. Let nobody cheat you, Cabinet Secretary. You cannot reduce the percentage as a person. It must be documented through this National Assembly. Madam Speaker, the law of Kenya Loans Board is known, is written. It is the one that can initiate the process. It is not the Cabinet Secretary. So, Madam Speaker, I like to support the sentiment and the recommendations of the committee and say that the recommendation is mild. We need more concrete. Let's say enough is enough. Let's say as it is. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
very much, Member for Mburi. The Honorable Harrison Kombe, Member for Magarini.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nasimama kuunga mkono kamati na kazi yake nzuri iliyofanya. Mheshimiwa Spika, uhuru umepatikana kote nchini baada ya kubuniwa kwa halmashauri ya barabara za mashambani. Ni punde tu ndipo tulipopata kuona sehemu zile ambazo hazipitiki zinarekebishwa, na hivi sasa tunajivunia kwamba tuna barabara. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningeomba na ningependekeza ya kwamba badala ya kupunguza hela hizi za halmashauri ya barabara za mashambani, ningependekeza 10% iongezwe hadi 15%, na ile 22% iongezwe hadi 25%, ile 32% iongezwe hadi 35%. Hivyo Kenya nzima itakuwa na barabara za kujivunia huko mashambani. Kwa wakati wa sasa, matunda na vyakula vingine vinaharibikia mashambani kwa sababu hatuwezi kuvisafirisha kufika kwenye soko kwa sababu ya hali mbaya ya barabara tulizo nazo. Mheshimiwa Spika, nipende kusema ya kwamba tusifunike blanketi kaunti zote. Ningependa kuitenganisha kaunti yangu ya Kilifi kwamba kile kichache wanachopata kinaonekana. Barabara nyingi wamejaribu kurekebisha, japo halmashauri ya barabara za mashambani imefanya vyema zaidi kuliko hizo kaunti, kwa sababu sehemu nyingi zimerekebishika, isipokuwa barabara moja kwa sasa kutoka JIS kwenda Ramada ndio ambayo haijapata kutekelezwa, japo habari zilizoko ofisini kwangu ni kwamba mwanakandarasi hivi karibuni ataweza kufika. Pia vile vile niseme kwamba halmashauri ya barabara kuu ikaweze kutekeleza ile mipango ambayo iko nayo kwa ile barabara ya kutoka Merikebuni kuingia Garashi na mpaka Baricho, ikaweze kuinuliwa hadhi yake na ikafikie hadhi ya lami. Ni mipango ambayo iko, lakini tungeomba ikiwezekana fedha zile za mwaka 23-24 zikaweze kuachiliwa mara moja ili hizi kazi zikapate kuendelea. Na hivyo inapopata kufanyika, Mheshimiwa Spika, natumai ya kwamba kila mmoja atakuwa anafurahia kazi njema ile inayoendelea. Nipendekeze pia mkuu wa halmashauri hiyo ikiwezekana aweze kufika mbele ya kamati na akaweze kujibu yale yote ambayo alikuwa ameyanakili na maagizo aliyoyatoa, akaweze kubeba msalaba wake. Kwa hayo machache, Mheshimiwa Spika, shukrani kwa kunipatia nafasi. Ninaunga mkono.
Asante sana mbunge wa Magarini. Nafasi sasa ni ya mbunge wa Mbeere North ambaye ni Mheshimiwa Geoffrey Ruku.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise first of all to congratulate the chairman of the committee for this report. Because many times, Madam Speaker, those in executive have taken this house for granted. And it's a very bad signal or a very bad way of working. Madam Speaker, I want to rebuke with strongest terms the minister or the cabinet secretary in charge of roads in the Republic of Kenya. Because he can only be the one who is issuing these instructions to the Director Generals of the parastatals under his ministry to come up with such kind of recommendations. By so doing, is demeaning the powers bestowed to this House and members of this House, that we cannot be able to supervise or oversight the implementation of roads works in our constituency. And if such a recommendation can go through, Madam Speaker, in the next year and the other one, we will see further decrease of the resources allocated under the rural roads, which are extremely critical to motorability of our roads in the constituencies of the Republic of Kenya. This is something which needs to be cut at the nip as soon as possible, because if we go with this kind of trajectory, Madam Speaker, many parts of our country will be completely impassable. At the moment, Madam Speaker, we are experiencing a lot of roads in the constituencies which require routine maintenance, and routine maintenance which need to be done in the most appropriate way, marraming, graveling, as well as compacting of these roads. This can only happen if that money, which has been allocated in the past, continues in the same way. Actually, the recommendation of this report, I thought it was wise to ensure or to call the minister in charge to come to the floor of the House and answer some of these questions to the members. Because we cannot start talking about the Director General of KERA or the Director General of the other institution. These are employees who receive instruction from the minister and the PS. So it will be important if the report recommends the minister to appear in the floor of the House so that he can be able to answer some of these questions, and so that we can give him a notice that him and his team should never repeat such kind of an action which is recommending arbitrary recommendation of, to ensure that Kenyans are not going to enjoy roads which are motorable within a different constituency in the Republic of Kenya. Madam Speaker, I support this report, and I urge the chairman of the committee, please make further recommendation. We need the minister to come here so that he can be held accountable by the House. And by the way, the reasons why the minister is quick to sit down with governors is because there is a notion with the senators and governors that the members who are here are just junior political people elected by, this is a house which can only enact laws in this Republic of Kenya. Senate cannot enact law. It can only propose laws. And the minister, having sat in the Senate, he akona kasumba. Madam Speaker, we want to recommend the minister to be called here to come and answer questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the report.
The Honorable John Waluke, member for Sirisia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me a chance also to contribute on this very important report. First, I want to support the committee and thank the chair and this committee for bringing up this. Although it is not on time, but Madam Speaker, tough action must be taken seriously on this report, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for many years, there are public officers who takes the laws lightly without thinking. And Madam Speaker, the only money that is used to the roads in areas that where we come from in our constituencies, Madam Speaker, is the carer money. The roads are passable because of this carer money, Madam Speaker. And the 15% that was given to the county government, Madam Speaker, their roads are impassable. And that is why, Madam Speaker, in some areas like where I come from, we did the roads with the carer, and later on the county government came and took those roads. For the last 10 years, Madam Speaker, those roads have never seen even a grader to grade the road. And they are still looking for the money from carer to make sure that they eat the money, because their work, I think county governments officers are just there to eat the money, Madam Speaker, because we have not seen their work properly. The 100 million or 200 million can be seen, and billions of money from the county government, Madam Speaker, are not seen in any work that the BARNS is doing. Madam Speaker, the chair should summon the DG to appear before the committee and give the reasons why he is joining the kangaroo committee, trying to squander money from carer to the county government. County government has a lot of money, Madam Speaker, in billions. And even last time we were in court, the CDF was in court because of county government wanting the money from CDF to go to the county government. And we are not going to allow, as a house, to allow the government, the carer, the DG, to move even 1 cent. And we want him immediately to cancel the letter that he wrote to the county government, the Naivasha meeting. Madam Speaker, action should be taken against that cocoon meeting that was there, Madam Speaker. That is a kangaroo meeting. It was a kangaroo meeting in Naivasha, and that kangaroo meeting has no any effect. The laws is made in this house, not that it is made in Naivasha and then used in this country, Madam. They should follow the constitution of this country. The constitution is very clear, Madam Speaker, and the mandates are given accordingly in every sector that this house legislate and make laws. Madam Speaker, the last thing I can say, Madam Speaker, is that the chair has been, the meeting the letter that he wrote was mild. The chair should write a very tough letter to them and summon them to come and appear before the committee of roads. Madam Speaker, for those few remarks, I support.
Very much. The Honorable Antonio Luoch, member for Madare.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, as I support this, let me begin by saying what my law professor, Lumumba PLO, taught me, that you do not respond to a mosquito bite with a sledgehammer. But I want to tell the chair, my good friend GK, and my former vice chair in ICT in the 12th Parliament, this was not a mosquito bite. This was an atomic bomb directed at this house, directed as members of Parliament, directed at the legislative functions, which is our core function under Article 95 of the Constitution. So I want to agree with those who have said, as I support, that your report is a little bit gentlemanly like yourself. I know you for a while, and you're gentlemanly, but he attack you gentleman, my good friend Chair. He tore gloves. We must deal with these guys perpendicularly, as I support. Secondly, though this memo is purported to be affecting the 2024-25 financial years, Madam Chair, this House will be painfully aware that our CRCs have already been asked to submit their reports for review. And I personally asked my CRC not to submit, because the moment we do, it is already going to be giving legitimacy to what this House has already has said is null and void. Madam Speaker, I want to join those who have said that the entity called IBEC or Intergovernmental whatever and Summit is not known to law and cannot purport to be substituting the role of this House under 94.5 and 95 of lawmaking, and cannot make law through the back door. Under Article 203 of the Constitution, Madam Speaker, the county government has a clear path on how revenue is divided between the two arms of government. And if this entity, for some reason, wants to find a way or a path on how revenue can be increased to the county, there are clear ways on how they can do it through the forum of Senate. It cannot be done through the back door of taking monies already appropriated between the levels of government, and in particular, this is money that was already earmarked for the constituencies. There is no back door way for this money to find its way to the counties through the back door. Madam Speaker, I want to agree with members who have said that KERA, this 22 and 10%, just like CDF, is one of the most visible and one of the most transparent funds that are implemented in any of our development sectors in this country. Not only should it be preserved, it should be increased if necessary. My last 2 points, Madam Speaker. The 22 and 10% were very hardly fought for by our predecessors in the 11th Parliament and continue to be safeguarded under the 12th Parliament. And Section 6 is very clear that this money is embedded in law. The formula on how this money is to be utilized or allocated is embedded in law. The only way that we can do a reverse on this is for this Parliament to have an amendment or a new bill or clause that reverses this. And in any case, if there was to be any reversal, this House would increase this amount from 22 to a percentage that is higher and not to a percentage that is lower. I want to conclude by saying, Madam Speaker, that this CS and the agencies of KERA should not only be asked to withdraw, they should be summoned to this House. When I was asking for a Kamkunji, it was on the basis that, just like the issue about university education, the CEO was summoned here to a member's Kamkunji. When there was an issue about the Biticon and the data collection, the CS was summoned here. This is a matter that is serious enough not to sanction it by way of a withdrawal, but to call the CS here to respond not only to this matter, but to the many other issues that members have raised, including when will the monies be remitted to us on time so that we can begin to work on our constituencies before the rain. I support.
The Honorable Fukukwenya, member for Kinango.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to weigh in in this report by this very honorable Committee of Transport and Infrastructure, led by the Honorable GK. Madam Speaker, I want to support the echoes that I've heard from this House through our colleagues, and Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, specifically on the issue of attempt by the executive to legislate. The Roads Act of 1999 stipulates clearly as to how this money should be shared. Through the different agencies, and especially the monies that are allocated to the constituencies, the 22% and 10%, that makes a total of 32%, Madam Speaker. Any attempt to give any directive is not only an impunity in itself, but also total disrespect and disregard of this House. As the Honorable Tom has just said, if there be any need to amend this law, then it must come to this House, so that then the House pronounces itself on this matter. And Madam Speaker, we have not seen any attempt to amend the same, and therefore any communication is an nullity in itself. Madam Speaker, KERA money and the roads that are built by the constituents or the constituencies that are built through members of parliament through their oversight are the only roads that are visible. And therefore, whether county governments have been promised by CRA that there's going to be an increase.
Order.
Okay, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Kwenyathuku, thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable members. Balance of time for the Honorable Kwenyathuku, who was on his feet, is 3 minutes. This motion will have another 46 minutes. So for those who have put a lot of interest, I can see the screen is still almost full. You will have an opportunity. Honorable members, and the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until this afternoon, Wednesday, the 27th day of September 2023 at 2:30 p.m. Thank you.